Go. Okay, there you go. So now you all know we're recording. Here's this. Let's go to the slideshow. Um, so welcome everybody. It's the new year, the new us, a new number.
Mm.
So does anybody have any announcements they would like to make? Um,
I would just say that today is the United States birthday.
Oh,
all right. Is that the date you came up with, Cornelia?
Yep.
Well, happy birthday, America.
January
For
14th?
those,
How'd you
yes.
get that, Cornelia? January
Uh,
14th?
Through a lot of research.
Yes, in fact, if I may interject, Cornelia's got a new book that'll be coming out talking all about it. And in
Yeah.
fact, we're going to be doing a special Zoom or one of our a special Zoom where she's going to go into more detail. She's going to present her research and talk about how she came up with this date. Um, and if the thing with July 4th, if you look at it historically, was that, yeah, the Declaration of Independence was signed by several people, but not all the colonies signed it. We were already at war because that started with, Lexington and Concord. So, uh,
Not only that,
and
we might have lost it.
yeah, and then you have the Treaty of Paris, which ended the war. Um, So you've got all kinds of things going on there and other kinds of dates. There was the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, all of which occurred before that kind of got things started. Um, and the last of the colonies, I don't think, signed the Declaration of Independence until what, like August or September or something?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, it took them a while because they had to go back to their home colony and talk to their people and get their approval before they would sign it.
You mean they didn't have
So,
internet and real quick like that?
and no, their version of internet was the horse.
The horse,
Yeah.
riding on the horse to get to the next place.
Yeah, even the roads probably weren't even that good then. So
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Actually,
okay,
this date is when the Congress had to ratify the Treaty of Paris. Otherwise, it would have had to been renegotiated.
Okay.
So Congress met in Maryland, and they didn't have a quorum. They had to wait for somebody to get out of a sick bed and come there
Oh,
to,
that's right. Yeah.
and then they ratified it, and it had to be sent back to King George immediately.
Yeah, immediately by ship, which takes how many
Yeah,
days?
that's right.
yes, yeah, everything took much longer in those days, which was why the Battle of New Orleans was fought after the War of 1812 had ended. So
Yeah.
the treaty had already been signed, but you know, mailman got mail got misrouted. So what can I tell you? Um,
This is just a quick little fun thing here. Does anybody like Twining's tea?
yes.
So if you look at their label, it says for over 300 years. And if you think about it, it's tea from England
Yep.
before 1776. So I go to their website and it says the oldest tea in England on Broad Street or Brand Street in England. We were not a part of the American Revolution Tea Party. Right on their website it says it. I thought that was so fun. Just
All right.
a good trivia.
All right. So I'm going to stop sharing because Gail has joined us.
Hi, Gail.
Hi,
There
Gail.
she
Hi,
is.
Gail.
Wow, and there's my new friend Mark Thomas. Now,
Hi,
for
Mark.
those of you who don't know, if you live in the Valley, BJ's is a great restaurant, fun place to go. They got a great happy hour, some good specials, and that's where Mark and I met. Uh, Mark's a bit of a musician, as you can tell by just looking behind him there. Got a
Great
keyboard
to
and a
see you
set of
guys.
drums.
Thank you.
And
Hi, Jim.
hi, Glad you could make it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't want to take up any more of Gail's time. I want to give her as much time as she would like or need. And if she gets, when she gets done, then we'll go back to the little slideshow, had some dates to mention. And I will mention that, let's see, February, our meetup is February 11th. Our main topic is going to be family dynamics.
Oh,
That's
fun.
love and war on the home, on the home front, if you would. Okay. Um, I've known Gail for, did we meet last century, Gail, I think? Yeah, so I've known Gail for a long time. She's, and we've had her speak pretty much every year for the last few years because she is just an exceptional numerologist and gives us a whole lot of good information and insight. Let me look around here, see if does anybody have anything else they want to mention or bring up? No? Okay, Gail, if you would unmute yourself, you are good to go. We are recording.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay. And you can see me because I can see me. Anyway, good morning, everybody, afternoon, and thank you for inviting me back. As you all know, my specialty is numbers and numerology, but not astrology. So if you are looking for astrological information here, this will not be the priority. It will be on the numerological look. And we're going to look at just not this time today, this year, but going out in time as well and going back in time, because we are basically controlled by the heavens, and which can bring in a lot of astrological information. But what I look at is how the geometric shape of the system has affected us. And right now, we are living in a country called the United States, and I want to give you some information on this background because it's quite unique, and it includes the characteristics that we appear all the time and how we are and why we handle things the way we do. So we have a situation where the America is what I call an invented country. And it's not like any other place on the planet. It's invented. And what I mean by that is this was not a place like France that had a big historical background, or Germany, or China, or India, where people came from, quote, India. This place was like you went to an island and you just put a stake in the ground and they invited all these other people to come and you invent a place. And that's what we have. So you cannot compare the United States to other countries, and you cannot compare the geopolitics of this country with other countries. So it's one of the things that makes us unique. How we developed is very unusual. So it's very unique in all ways, including the geopolitical terms. And so its path through history is very different than these other countries. And America has two main cycles that are going on right now. And you may have heard of the big 80-year cycle. I don't know if you've heard of the 50-year cycle. And if you look at America and you go back every 80 years, you will see a crisis that ended up with a positive change to the culture. And so let's go back 80 years, we were World War II. Let's go back 80 years before that, we were the Civil War. Go back 80 more years and you are in the American Revolution, which started the whole thing. And so you have these big, big cycles that then go through crisis and then result in a higher level of prosperity and advancement. But America does not respond unless it goes through a major crisis. So if you look at our behavior, every time we had a crisis, starting with the revolution, we ended up with a new nation and a very unique way of handling the government of it and religions and all of that. Same with the Civil War. That's when the federal government really became into power over the states. And then you became into these World War II, And the ending of that brought big prosperity to America, as well as the rule of experts. So we've been living with the rule of experts for about 80 years. So the rule of experts is another thing that's up for grabs and change. These cycles, when they complete, take about 7 or 10 years to really go through its crisis and dump you to the higher level that you're going to go. And right now, America is in one of these crises. We have come out almost 80 years from World War II, so we are in that cycle right now. So when you see this upheaval going on, it's all part and parcel of building to a crisis. It's not COVID. It has to be a crisis that affects the entire population, changes the institutions and the socio-economic culture of the nation. So that's why you're in, and it feels like craziness. And where these nut jobs come out. So whether the crisis will be in politics, getting Trump in office, and then seeing the fallout from that, and destroying a lot of our institutions, et cetera. And our institutions now are up for grabs anyway, because they cannot handle the situation as it is right now. And so we have created what we'll call an ending of an empire. And the empire of the United States is not going to go away, is known as an empire, but it no longer has the uni power of the world. As you're seeing, you have now a multi-power world. So the United States cannot operate just by itself and make decisions unilaterally without major fallout around the world. Right now, the world looks at America as a very dangerous place because of its behavior. And inside America, it's become a very dangerous place because the institutions that it has depended upon are going through a much needed structural change and demolish. So we have to take a look at the 50-year cycle as well. And the 50-year cycle brings us to the end of the Reagan era. So the years preceding this, and the problem with what your experience is, these two cycles have converged. This is most unusual. So you not only have a institutional crisis, which means Congress, the presidency, the courts, okay, you have a socioeconomic challenge here by the ending of the Reaganomics, which we have long lived with for 50 years. So when he came in 80, all right, we're going to finish that up the end of the 20s. So you can just bet that the 20s are going to be extremely tumultuous year after year after year until this cycle completes. We have the crisis and we move to another state of prosperity, cultural changes, etc. So much of this is on cue, but it drives everybody nuts because they're frightened. They don't know, everything they depend upon seems to be falling apart. Major experts that we have used become suspicious. Nobody trusts any of these institutions to really come through. And you're seeing, I think I got some of these numbers. It was just in the last few years. I'll read, I have a few notes here. And of course, when you want them, they're probably on the floor. Hang on. But anyway, I think Congress has an 8% approval rating. And in the last 3 years, Supreme Court has lost 20% approval rating. It's now down to 49. That means not even half the nation trusts the Supreme Court. And then you go right down the line, all of them, and ends with the Congress, only 8% trust them. So there's a great mistrust in the leadership of the nation, and the structure in place cannot deal with it. It cannot process it. So you're starting to see some of these institutions be looked at as they have to go, and the current leadership cannot do it. So when you take a look at what necessary changes to make this more of a democratic republic, you will have to change the electoral college, get rid of the gerrymandering. You will have to get rid of the filibuster, and anything that in the electoral college, I said that, I think, all of these things that prevent the nation from having a real democracy. Right now, we have what we'll call the politicians choosing the electors, versus the electors choosing the politicians. And I think it's 33%, if it's not more than that, states have only one party leadership. Like California, it's a one party leadership state. Texas is a one party leadership state. So you do not have to win a general election when you have a one party state. You just have to win the primary. So in looking at where we have come and gone in the last elections, it was the primaries that chose the winner. And so why you see such awful behavior by a lot of these politicians is because they basically are acting for their base, not the general public, and therefore they misbehave and they look ridiculous, but their base likes it, and that's where they have to go to win the primary. So it's a skewed system. It doesn't work. And this is what you see in the process of change is the chaos we're going through now. We had 2 years ago, we had the riots in Washington. There's going to be more events. There's going to be some kind of crisis. People ask, what do I think that is? I really don't know. I don't think it will be germ warfare or anything like that. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a complete meltdown in the economy. It could be Trump winning office and putting all his supporters in there, pardoning the rioter. It could be any of that. That it's a dangerous situation if he gets in, and that would bring on the crisis. But we don't really know what the crisis is, except that we will have one. And it's leading up to it now. Most likely the election you want to really follow is the 28 election. Right now, 2024 is setting up the nation for the year of 2025 and how it will continue on in 2025. So this is a situation where we're all looking at these ridiculous polls right now. Pay no attention to them at all. It is a waste of your time and energy. Don't be frightened by any of this stuff. This is a natural progression. We got to go through it. It's like treatment, so we can go to a different state, a higher state of our culture and our prosperity. America is the most prosperous place on the planet. Number one, it is self-invented, okay? It cannot go by a lot of archaic rules, kings, all these last, trying to bring history in from the past into the present. It doesn't work for us. We're in constant change, and it's because we have a 5 life path. So the 5 life path, which comes from our date of birth, July 4, 1776, and after all these disputes of the time and the blah, 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 you look at the metaphysical reasons for the birth of this country to usher in the Aquarian age and to bring assimilation on the planet. So astrology looking wise, it is in a sign of Cancer. And also, you said that anyone talking about democracy would win. Is that, I don't think I said it that way. Okay, so let me get through some of this and then we'll do questions. I know I did not say whoever wins the election, whatever. Okay, let me continue on. I don't want to lose my momentum here. I'm talking about the birthplace of the United States, that it has a metaphysical reason, and it was to teach and learn assimilation on this planet of all these species. And so right now, America was given this opportunity to really completely invent itself on the planet and bring in all these assorted nationalities, genders, shall we say, female, male, whatever, buys everything. Nationwide, just come on in, because it's about freedom. And without freedom, okay, I got to put my phone so it doesn't go off for me. Without freedom, basically, we can't really exist. We can't make the changes we need. So if we fail in assimilation, we pretty much are doomed as a nation. We can't go off and be a France. We can't go off and be an Israel. This is not our deal. It is not our deal. We're not to rely on just the history of where we come. We always talk about, I'm Italian or I'm Irish or, I'm Russian or whatever. That's where my nationality is. We don't say, basically, I'm American. I was born here, but my family someplace else, my relatives, my ancestry is of this, whatever. So this is the beauty of America. And most Americans have no appreciation of this. They don't think of this. They think of, how come you're preventing me from having an assault weapon so I can do what I want to do? And they fight for these stupid things that basically separate. So we are keeping learning the lesson of assimilation. Requirement to have that is freedom. Without freedom, basically the people revolt. So you are seeing if, say, somebody like a Trump got elected and it tapped down the freedom, you will see crisis, riots, and revolts in the nation because you are taking away our true nature. And that would be leading us into the crisis that I mentioned, but we can have a crisis without Trump being elected. So it's again, it's a great unknown. Like nobody knew World War II was coming, or let's put it this way, we ignored it as a nation. One of the things that America is a very interesting characteristic. It's quite immature. It's quite naive. It's only about 240 years old. And it is a situation where it kind of like, here's a crisis in the world. We'll just sort of stay out of it. We'll ignore it until it gets so bad and they drop a bomb on my house. And then we jump in like craziness. Okay. And so we have this crazy behavior that is something where we want to be able to understand that it's part of our immaturity. All these nations that join a fight or start a fight usually have great historical background. America does not have great historical background. We don't really like war, but we do a poor job many times because we come in late or we make these very fast decisions. Like we're thrilled, let's go, jump in, woo, save. And so like we went into Afghanistan like crazy, and then we got out like nutty, we just did that whole thing poorly. And that's part of our immaturity. But we are learning, and I say that there is no place on the planet like this place. So we don't want to get too discouraged or in despair. This is a terrific place. We're way ahead and we're going to stay ahead in AI. And nobody can touch us in that right now, even if they try. And as we go through crisis, it will appear like we are falling apart, breaking apart. But in many ways, we're falling apart so we can fall together at a better and higher level. And it always brings in more prosperity. The ending of the Civil War, and that was another 80-year cycle, brought in the cementing of the federal government. They had the federal government over states' rights. Prior to that, it was the states' rights against federal rights. So and that was the big push after the Civil War, and we had complete chaos from that. And again, the states trying to undermine the federal power. But the federal power grew, and now we're coming across some of the same issues, with voting rights. And so these are all up for grabs again. And female rights. We're visiting a lot of what I call the 70s right now. Prior to Reagan get elected, we are revisiting the 7s or the 10 years that before that. So we visit Roe versus Wade. We visit voting rights. We visit many of the things that we had that we thought were settled in the 70s prior to this Reagan 50-year cycle beginning. We're looking at these, cleaning these up to go forward into the next 50-year cycle. So we have these two major cycles. And if you can understand the drama that goes with these to make the change, you can understand why we have, people are just polarized or black and white is the way they behave themselves. Like it's my issue or your issue or what have you. So my feeling is, if one of the reasons why I do not suggest you pay any attention to the polls, this is that you have a situation with the polls right now with Biden. And neither one of these people is who I would prefer to be my candidate, but we'll see. The candidacy of Biden has looked terrible since February of 23. It will look terrible until a transition month of May of this year. And then he will skyrocket beginning in June. So you cannot pay attention to this at all with what he's doing, where his figures right now are poor. So both he and Harris are in a huge slump. They're still in the slump, and you're not going to see a transition until the month of May, and then the skyrocketing begins in June. And that's basically when people will start to take all of this business in November with more seriousness anyway. Nobody takes this serious, whether, the thing about having, as I said before, these states that are one-party states, majority of the states are one-party states, they have to win the primary. So that's the only reason why Iowa is even, it's a snore, really. And I think one of the political writers the other day wrote something about what's the average age of Iowans? And he said deceased. And I'm like, oh God. And it's kind of true. But it's basically to look at a primary and win the primary. And so we understand that in one-party states, you look at the primary. So very possibly Trump will be the winner. My feeling is he will be convicted in probably March, April, or May on these indictments. And I mean, it could possibly happen in the next month, but more likely to happen March, April, and May. If he gets convicted, he will lose for sure about 10% of his supporters. Now, having said that, he could still pull off he could still be the candidate even if he's convicted. Doesn't matter in the United States. There's a lot of cleaning up of our laws and our regulations, but the leadership in office now cannot do that. They are not capable. When you see an ending of an empire, empires last about 250 years, and we are coming to the end of our empire. That doesn't mean we lose our place in the world. We're just not the empire we were. And so as we do this, we understand that the last stage of an empire, we go back into ancient times, and with these empires, you will find that the politicians become performers. And it's very true across the board. Even what's his name in Ukraine, Zelensky, was even a performer before he became a politician. Trump is a performer trying to be the politician. And if you go down the list, you will find that they act as performers. So they're really acting for their base. Never mind the general population. They will always act for their primary base. So this system is screwed, and there's no way to change it unless we get these, we change the system, which means term limits, age limits, and removal of these things that get in the way of a real, true election of the general public. And none of that is possible at this time. None of it. And so we do not, remember, Americans do not do well unless they have a crisis. Right now, we have crisis of the senior citizens and the elderly. And when we had COVID, this was the group that died off, okay? And I didn't see one march or one protest for seniors or elderly. We have Black Lives Matter, we have anti-abortion, all these marches, but there wasn't one march for seniors or the elderly. And this is a huge crisis because our largest group of population, growing population, are seniors and the elderly. And again, if you watch Washington, it does nothing to address this. And so we are going to get knee deep in this crisis in the 20s, and you will see it will affect your Social Security, your Medicare, and your Medicaid. It's a system that cannot maintain itself and nobody wants to touch it, but you will be forced. And you're going to see a bunch of really angry people later in this 10-year period because of this issue. You will also see the fulfillment of all of these pensions by the governments of local, state, federal. They cannot be fulfilled. There is not the money. If you go and raise the taxes for people, they will scream. And so they will cut services, raise fees, they will do everything. And it's part and parcel of the same wishful thinking by politicians. So the system is screwed, but the crisis that is right now in momentum is the senior and elderly, and it's going to come to a head within the next few years, certainly by 2028. And then the next thing that you want to look at is we have a shortage of workers. Now, during World War II, when we needed the workers to save the war, our side, we solicited females to come to work. And in order for them to do that, the government underwrote and funded childcare centers during World War II so that the women could go to work. And I know my mother worked in a aircraft factory, and they were all the childcare centers were funded by the government during this time period. And then they really, after the war ended, they wanted women to go back and go home. Well, the women didn't want to go back and go home, but they let go subsidized childcare. And so you have a situation where right now, if you really wanted the female to go back to work, the government would subsidize childcare or childcare centers for these females to enter the workplace. So it's not a serious issue. Yes, we want workers, but we don't want to pay to bring in the female worker, which we did during World War II. So again, the crisis of not enough workers, and that is workers support Social Security and all these social safety nets without having the workers with their tax base, et cetera. You're speaking with a forked tongue. Yes, you want the workers, but not hard enough. And certainly not to invest in that, which would really bring more workers and money into the marketplace. And these are buyers and everything else. But so it's very short-sighted, but that's very much American. We're not going to do it until it's a crisis. You know, I mean, it's a crisis when people started dying with COVID. Boom, within 1 year, we had vaccine and shots in the arm. That's how America can respond. We have not recognized these two problems of childcare so we could bring women into the workplace, or care for the elderly, some type of system in place that will help fund this terrible situation. I get a lot of anecdotal information about this, about the female, the elderly, terrible care, not able to afford their medications. It's a life or death issue, and yet we will not do anything because our way of handling the issue is we have to wait till the crisis, till the wolf is at the door or the barn is burning down. That's when we act. So we're going to sit here and wait for the crisis to create itself, and then we'll respond. And so you see this behavior go on and on and on, and it's characteristics of the United States immaturity, naivety, and the political system that rewards those who win the primaries in a one-party state. So it's screwed. And you're seeing cracks in the system of the experts by the denigration of your universities right now, and the firing of Harvard and University of Pennsylvania. You're starting to see less trust in experts. You know, Fauci was an expert. Other people during COVID were experts. And this is true of both the Trump and the Biden situation. So you have a condition where Americans will get away from the experts. They'll still have experts, but they will bring in what I call generalists. And generalists are people who will see a bigger picture than just what an expert is looking at. And we need the generalists as well as the experts. So that's kind of like another characteristics of this period that's ending from World War II. So again, we have the 80-year cycle, and we have the 50-year cycle. So all of this is going to affect the economic structure as well. And if you I'm looking at the private sector, the 3 month job gain average is sliding down. It's sliding down. So it looks like we're hiring, but it's sliding down. The biggest bulk of the hiring is in government and in healthcare. And basically, that's pretty much it. It's very little in, shall we say, manufacturing, all of that. And so we're in a big transition, which is standard operating procedure. And so we can go forward and look at this in a very different perspective than what we have now. And so each of these 80-year and 50-year cycles that I mentioned always peaks with a defining crisis. We haven't had a defining crisis. It certainly was not COVID. It was a crisis, but not a defining crisis. All right. It really affected basically an elderly population. And it has certainly changed the way we do business, the way we conduct ourselves. A lot of companies and businesses, sadly to say, went out of business. The artificial 6 feet away. Here's an idea of the craziness of quote of these experts. Stand 6 feet away from the person in line. I remember going to Trader Joe's out on the sidewalk. This is why I lived in the city and on La Brea, and I'm standing there, and their markers are on the ground 6 feet apart as you wait to get into the store, and then you have to wait to go into the store so that you can't have any more than 6 feet apart from the person in front of you. Who made that up? That was pulled out of thin air. They really didn't know. They just think it's airborne, and they don't know they didn't know enough, but these experts give us these dramatic conditions, which we all kind of went along with. And this is the thing where right now we're mistrusting experts. And so there's a backlash against experts. And that can also be very detrimental because we don't want to really throw away the experts. We want to have another party monitor these experts. So this is something where I'm looking at here the critical period of, say, the last cycle, okay, where we had a socioeconomic crisis was the 70s, building up to the 50-year cycle. Now, the major cycle is the 80 years, which we're building up to right now. Okay, and for anybody who came in late, that means that you can expect tumultuous times throughout the 20s. That doesn't mean you can't stabilize yourself, but you have to understand this is part and parcel of a requirement for us to make change, because when it's easy, we don't do anything. When it's nice, we don't do anything. We just keep the boat. We elect 85-year-olds to office. We're now going to elect somebody who's going to be 82. We have no term limits on anybody, no age limits on anybody. And it's a place where America changes, but behaves like a nut job in doing so. So this is a period we're in. If you go back to the 70s, you're going to be dealing with some of the same issues that we have today in the socioeconomic class. So after World War II was brought on the year before, the 10-year before that period, to bring on the part of the crisis was the Great Depression. And so we had the 30s with the Great Depression, then we had the big crisis of World War II, and then we became into this huge prosperous industrial period of the United States after it. And I would imagine there's no difference. We'll go through another very big prosperous period in the 30s. Now, you got to live through the 20s to get to the 30s. Now, one of the answers by some of these, quote, experts are, and the scientists are considering, is prolonging the life of the individual by coming up with medical breakthroughs that will prolong the lifespan of an individual. And so this is to help the seniors and elderly remain in the workplace longer. So they want to get these medical breakthroughs. It's a big priority right now, so that we have less people retiring out of the workplace and a higher quality of life. So I do believe there's money being put into this. So you will see this later in this 20-year period come into play, where we have some what we'll say, I don't say cures, there's no cure. However, some breakthroughs to improve the quality of life, the age of the quality. And also you should start to see changes in the age of retirement. And it will be an essential with the Social Security, Medicare program. So all of us who are benefiting right now from these programs, I think will probably be protected, but some newer ones may not be, and certainly future ones will not be to the extent that they are now. And so I would suggest anyone who's getting, quote, pension funds, anything like that, to treat them as if they are a subsidy and alimony payment, and most alimony payments have a time limit. And so simply because it's going to be, the general public is going to rise up against paying more or losing less services. All of this is part of the crisis of America throughout the 20s. So this is sort of like the World War II, because, and I wrote something down here, FDR followed by Truman gave unprecedented authority and influence to those who have special abilities. And this persisted after the war, and it persists to this day, because like we turned over the COVID management, the crisis of the COVID, to, quote, experts who were qualified, but only in narrow specific areas. And so they could not provide the coherent leadership of the country and what they really needed. And so we're now in this backlash against COVID vaccines and all that. So we have the failing expert period. That's what we're in now, is the failing of the experts. That's going to continue as we create a new change here, the demographic changes. So that what is the biggest demographic change in America is the booming or the growing excess of retirement age Americans. It's an excessive amount. And unless they keep working, okay, and it's going to make a real problem for us. They are no longer productive, and they are continually consuming our goods and services. So there's going to be a backlash against this. And this is going to be where a lot of rubber meets the road in a few more years, a lot of anger about this. And so, you know, I think you all know about the how many workers to support one retirees. And as this part of our demographics is excessive and grows, what are we going to do? We'll be forced to do something. And so it's not that you want to get all afraid and all that stuff, but it's something where we need to address it rather than ignore it. And that's what we're good at doing, is ignore it until we're forced. And so this is the biggest trend that you're going to see. Until we're forced, nothing much is going to change until we go through the crisis that is required of the United States. See, the United States is, shall we say, a leader in the world. We start and we initiate programs because we have a 5 life path. 5s require freedom. They also require somehow to the ability to indulge in, say, physical, what we'll call the 5 senses. And the 5 senses, touch, taste, all that. But if you see it, when it results in America, you see it overeating, overworking, overdrinking, over drugs, excessive behavior, whatever, impatience. And America has a characteristic which is fun-loving, but also very dangerous to itself. And so you're seeing right now, 40% of Americans are obese. That's not fat, they're obese. And so what we do is we create a drug to take care of this obesity. Now, we don't really know the long-term effects of the drug, but it's going to save a lot of lives. But what we'll do is try to get quick fixes to our situations, which is very American. And we're very impatient. Pay attention to how we drive. Pay attention, particularly in California. It's a 5 state. The date of birth of California gives it a 5 life path. So California is a catalyst of change for the country. So pay attention to what happens in California, which is a one-party state. And it is ripe for change because it no longer can function well for the general population. It's overpriced. It's short of housing, most extreme. It has the highest cost of living in the United States. And we have the highest amount of social services, which cannot be supported with a shrinking workforce. So we have a situation here, what happens to California, it's ripe for chaos and crisis as well, because it's a 5 state. So, I mean, we all live in it. So pay attention, do what you have to do as it goes through its own crisis. And it will just almost parallel the country. So I'm trying to make sure I cover this whole area before I move on. Okay. What America tends to do is to try everything else before what it needs to do. They'll have this, it'll do that. It's like it makes these incremental things. And so it keeps trying. This is what Churchill talked about. America, will you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing, I think he said, after they've tried everything else. And that's what we're doing. We're trying everything else. But what we really need to do is this. It's like during World War II, we tried everything else. We tried to avoid this. We tried to avoid that until finally we got a bomb and we got bombed. Okay, now we have to do something. And that's what's going to happen. We got this crisis, and we do these piecemeal pieces, and then we'll get the big kahuna. And I don't know what that will be. My feeling, it will be somehow in the political world and the economic world. So just kind of use common sense going forward for yourself. People want to know what to do with the financial world. That's up for grabs too, because a lot of things that are going on now are based on the old experts, and there do this or there do that. The good thing about capitalism is you can change the rules and regulations around it pretty easily. And so this is the good thing about it. This has really helped America, is by having a system of capitalism in place. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have excesses or we're partial. And that's, again, part and parcel of our laws and regulation, where we allow. Basically, we had a breakdown in the equality, et cetera, starting in 71. And it's only gotten worse, where we have this now a very shrinking amount of population that has decent living or decent price of living, middle class. And we have this small, tiny percentage of Americans that are uber wealthy. Again, this is all part and parcel of the 71, where we went off the gold standard and we began to big separation of what management makes versus the general public makes, investors make, and we changed all the laws to allow certain type of investments to be made, which has skewed the entire marketplace. And so it's not a level playing field at all now. You have big hedge funds owning many, many companies that you no longer can privately invest in. So the shrinkage of the companies that you could, as a stockholder, invest in are no longer available to you. They have been purchased out. So each industry has 4 major companies that run them. And because of this, we have a shrinking ability of people to really become wealthy. You have, even in the housing industry, these big private equity funds and other hedge funds buying up single family houses and then renting them out in the thousands. So those houses are all off the market from the average American citizen. So the shrinkage of homes is going, home ownership is going down. All of these are part of the dysfunction of our leadership that refuses to take a look at these very serious problems in America, where we have a real housing shortage. And the worst is, of course, in California. So California is the leader, the vanguard. We even got our, we even got what I call a wake-up call in some of these situations in California, that refuse to change, not in my backyard and all these kind of things. So we're the hothouse for change in America. And we're going to be the hothouse for breaking down some of these social systems that cannot sustain themselves. I mean, one of the latest ones is all illegal immigrants can have health insurance, and healthcare, I should say, healthcare. So free healthcare. And so, you know, whatever is happening here, we're going to be the leader as a 5-state into make these changes. And so it is something where we can't really, we can say, well, this eclipse or that eclipse, and basically astrology, this and this. A couple of things you want to make sure that my belief system is based on the heavenly structure and the constellations. And right now, we are all going into the beginning phase of the age of Aquarius. It's hardly begun. We are leaving the age of Pisces. All of us have to reincarnate through each of these 12 constellations to learn the lessons of that constellation. And so we have a situation now where we're barely understanding some of the ancient mystical spiritual information. And this only began by beginning the ushering in the 1800s of the age of Aquarius, where we had what I call these weird people show up with all of these ancient things about levitating or being able to read auras and all of this, because so much of the ancient wisdom has been lost in the civilizations that have disappeared. We have had many, 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 many civilizations that we don't even know about that had abilities that we don't even touch that yet. We're coming out of what I call the dark ages. We're coming out of, say, the Iron Age, and we are just really tiptoeing into the edge of Aquarian age. And the Aquarius is an air sign, which is more of an intellectual sign, enlightenment sign, awareness sign, big scientific breakthroughs, being able to travel through space, finally being able to develop the ability to travel at the speed of light. Until we can travel at the speed of light, we will not be able to explore anything of the universe. We can only stay in our safe little go to Mars kind of scenario. And maybe through our telescopes go further, but in order to really examine space, we have to be able to travel at the speed of light, and that's so far away. We also have to learn to levitate. We don't know how to do that. We used to do that. We have to learn how to heal ourselves through sound. We used to go into sound chambers and be able to do our personal tone, the tone that you were born with, that your soul was created with. When you were born, you were given a phonem in the heavens, and that is your forever sound. No matter how many times you incarnate here through whatever constellation, you have this tone. You need to be able to understand it, use it, and that will literally vibrate all of your molecular structures into balance. We don't know how to do any of this yet. We used to know all that through ancient civilizations, but they are gone. And the earth has also gone through many, many incarnations. And so it will continue on to as ever thus. So I don't worry about the planet going under into the ocean or any of that, because it will completely reincarnate itself. One of the things about the salt water, it's a healing agent. And if required, we will then dunk ourselves, shall we say, and heal, because we do not, what we'll say, get rid of negativity in a normal, healthy way. So we get it through earthquakes, we get it through, hurricanes, we get it through flooding, we get it through fires. We get it through volcano eruptions. This removes negativity, and it's essential as we build up negativity to have these natural, quote, disasters to cleanse this planet of negativity. If we get too much negativity, then we're probably going to have to go under to be able to cleanse ourselves of this negativity. Never mind, Earth will continue to reincarnate, and so will we, as we learn more about the planes of existence and the consciousness of each plane, and that we travel We never lose our phoneme, that's our tone. Sometimes you recognize the tone yourself. If you're listening to an orchestral piece, you may recognize a tone that is so chilling, you know, your hair stands on end and you get teary-eyed. That tone is very, very important to you to understand and recognize it. And because we each have one, there is a phoneme struck. It is your forever sound. And nobody really knows what their forever sound is. They listen to bowling sound balls or, you know, all of these things to create sounds. But it's going to be an inside job really for you to discover your own sound. Everything now is going to start coming from an inside out proposition. We have been in a situation now in our incarnation where everything has been received from the outside, even the Bible. Somebody reads it, you know, and you go to synagogue, you go to church, you get a lesson, you absorb this from the outside. And so what you're going to be doing is cleaning up the inside, because right now this is extremely important to move forward into this new Aquarian age. And again, too, I want to bring to your attention the idea that we have approached the number 2. We are now going to start the rise of the female. The prep phase was 2004 to 2024. So with Pluto going into Aquarius, we launch the leap period of the I Ching. And this is a period about, well, we say, we begin the real serious rise of the female, and it's a 20-year, pure 20-year ride. So women need to get up, they need to show up, they need to stop being complacent or timid or afraid. They need to go out and get their network together and run for office and put themselves into appointed positions, get appointed, develop themselves, get onto boards, develop power, because with that will come the influence, and without influence, you're not going anywhere. And so women now must influence more and get off the comfort phase of behind the scenes. They have to come on the scene. So we're just going to really start that this month, which is very powerful time with Pluto going into Aquarius. And it's very important for female. She's got 1,000-year reign now. She's got to run and lead in the world. And so you're seeing this year worldwide elections going on that will influence the world. Now, one of the things to pay attention that in the election this year, Pluto will go back into Capricorn at the time of the election, the day of the election. Now, Pluto in Capricorn has ruled for the last 16 years, all our business and corporate bedfellows. They have been in bed for the straight off 16 years. Didn't have much of a chance to go very far because the corporate was busy directing the government. Now, that's coming to a change. So, but when you have the election in November, it happens to have retrograde back into there. So you may still see some old people, old leadership running and winning the presidency and other positions, the old type of leaders. However, Inauguration Day is back in the sign of Aquarius. So, and it's going to continue. So whoever gets elected as president they may have their agenda for this or that, but they have to go along with this energy of Pluto in Aquarius, which ushers in a lot of breakthroughs. A lot of your technology has been waiting for Pluto to get into Aquarius. You're going to see a big acceleration in your AI. You're going to see it into your medical, basically into your space travel, all of this. So it's a very exciting time period. It also requires a great deal of detachment, because that's Aquarius in the air sign. It's detachment. So one of the things that we have not gotten, and it's like a hidden cause of cell phones, is to continually go in to the cell phone to connect, which is really detachment. And it keeps us, quote, detached from the physical, which is very Aquarian. And it's going to teach us to eventually be able to communicate by mental telepathy. So it's a precursor to mental telepathy is by using the cell phone and sending texts and sending emails. So and even this Zoom meeting is detached. I'll go off and cook something or go for a walk, or I'm completely detached from you. I'm not emotionally involved. I'm not having a coffee with you. We used to be more attached, but the COVID and the convenience of Zoom has spread. So we are now physically detached. That's very Aquarian. And there's going to be more stuff like this. And it's going to lead into our ability to use mental telepathy to communicate. We will get better at this once we decide to go more inner than outer, where all our information is not coming from the outside world. Okay. Yes, I'm getting a question here. Usually, when I just did an hour and a half, I did almost 2 hours of a Zoom class yesterday, and everything was lined up on the right so I could read everybody all at once. So this is a different system to me. I'll read all the questions. Is there someplace, Jim, that I can read all the questions at once? Are they on the right side? Because I'm not seeing them. Okay. Why can't I hear you? Jim, can you unmute?
There you
Jim?
go. Okay, so let's see if there's anything. Um, let's see.
They're in the
Yeah.
chat, Gail.
I'm just, okay, here we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Sure.
That was too smart. I mean, duh. Anyway, oh, what is this saying? Why is this doing that? No, it's, okay. All right, hang on. It's giving me all these weird messages before I can open my chat. Okay. All right, let me go back to the beginning. Okay. Last year I said that anyone talking about democracy would win. Well, that's impossible because everybody's talking about democracy in some form or another. And pay attention to what they're doing, not what they're talking about. This is one of the things to know about an election year. Everybody is grumbling. That's what normal behavior in an election year. Nothing is good, nothing is right. So that's why you don't pay attention to a lot of this crap. Are there numerological cycles to these American history cycles that you could share? Well, the 80-year cycle is always about the big cycle where 8 is always about the big number where about we harvest and everything. It's like the ship comes into its harbor. Here's what you've been doing. Here's your payoff is the 80-year cycle. And now we go to a new state of prosperity and awareness, etc. 8 is always, it's the number of God in the Hebraic alphabet. It is the power. So we have these big historical 8 years for America. Remember, America is a very metaphysical, nothing is by accident in America in its founding. It was put together by the hierarchy. So we're being watched. What are we doing? We can fail if we do not pay attention to what we came in with, which is to learn assimilation and then market assimilation, because we are super good at marketing and selling and sell and market assimilation to the world. We're doing a pretty crappy job right now inside the country, but people still want to come here, because they just don't have what we have in their other nations. And take a look. One of the things you see with Putin is going back to an old script before World War II, where you get a country by just going in and grabbing it and making part of your own. This is an old script. We bomb them and shoot them and kill them, and then we take their land, and that's it. Because he wants to rebuild the empire. He will not be able to rebuild the empire simply because he's going into a period that's really headed against him. And I mean, he's gonna fight to the finish, that's for sure. And but again, we got to get further into the Aquarian period before you're going to see a lot of this really come to fruition. Soylent Green means Logan's Run. Yeah, kind of. Good Lord. Okay. Okay. I'm glad you're back, Jim.
Oh yeah.
And okay, where am I here? Okay. About the internet, strange groups to find each other and fake news. This is the downside. Well, every time you have a breakthrough, it can be used for good or evil. It's the same with fire. I can heat my house or I can burn your house down. It's for good or evil. So I will bet on the internet. enabling strange groups. It's for management to take care of this and us to take care of management, not management to manage, reverse. And fake news is obviously going to get worse. It's going to influence the election. It's influencing the elections in Taiwan, and yet the good guy won a third term. Yes, you're going to have a lot of misinformation. Do not believe all you things you hear. Try to get your source from something other than these internet strange groups. And yet you're going to hear with internet used to, AI used to even make the sound of somebody like a Biden or a Trump sound as if it's real. It's really coming from them, and they really said that. And yes, if labor is going to be affected, because as the price of labor goes up, companies find that they're going to do without labor. And the example this last week or 2 weeks is Pizza Hut. They laid off 2,000 delivery trucks, drivers, because of the costs of doing business in the state of California and other states. They can't afford it. So now if you want a pizza from Pizza Hut, you have to arrange your own delivery. They no longer, and that's a direct effect of the cost of labor. And so what you're going to see, tech also stepping in what labor was doing, because they were too expensive, tech will replace them. And there's a brand new McDonald's near me, and it's completely tech. You walk in, if you haven't already pre-ordered on your phone, you walk in and there's a screen and you order and pay there. Okay. And then you get a number and then they bring out your food. So somebody's in the back. It's a matter of time before the robot will bring out your order. I was in San Mateo a couple of weeks ago on the peninsula, and I went into a Chinese Szechuan restaurant where it's the hot pot. You get the big, it's wonderful. Anyway, everything was served with robots. And so they brought in the separate little individual meats and fish you added to the hot pot. And there was a waiter, but he basically was like a referee of these robots. And this is to say, listen, robots don't want health insurance, and they're not going to sue you. They're not going to be discrimination on robots. So yes, tech will affect a lot of jobs. It already is. And as wages and protections for workers go up, you're going to have more and more people lose their jobs. So this is a huge issue. I don't call it a problem. I call it a transition where we have to learn to make these changes that adjust to this in government. And also, how do these people who don't have jobs, how do they survive? Where's their money going to come from? So again, this is a very big problem that has to be worked out. And I would say we're not looking at that yet. And again, America has to be hit on the head before it will respond. Can Biden be an advocate for the elderly? Right? Not now. No. The last thing he wants to look is more elderly. He already looks like a dead man walking when he walks, when he talks, when he shuffles. And he came somewhere recently on the news, and when he got off the plane, he took the arm of his wife. That was scary. Like he's holding her up. That actually he took her arm. And so, no, I don't think he's the best person to be the advocate for Americans. So let him get elected and then he can do it, but not right now. No. Nobody wants to look old. Trump doesn't want to look old. They are old. They just, until these electorates, are pushing on for this service, and defeating people who do not vote for it, then you're not going to see a change. There almost has to be a revolt. And a lot of elderly don't vote. A lot of seniors vote. But when you get into more, say, where they need assisted living or they're at home, there's not your voting population much anymore. So they're a dying breed, but yet this is the breed that's growing. So what do you do with them? Because politicians want to know, they want to go for the voting class first. And what the good thing is that the youth is becoming older and they're getting more involved. And so The question here is, do the good times roll as soon as we enter 2030, or does it take it takes a bit of time? I'd say by 2032. So we first have to get through crisis, get a plan in place, but there's terrific, I'm reading some of these scientific breakthroughs that are coming in about 5 to 10 years. So that's going to put us in the beginning of the 30s. So, we're already talking about this pill in treating cancer right now. And there'll be other things where we don't have to cut and burn and all of that and poison to get rid of cancer. Right now, we're still cutting, poisoning, and burning. I think Russians want a Uranus type of revolution. It's extremely Saturnian, but hopeful that ship's in Aquarius. Again, once we get more into Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is really, it's almost like a non-event, except you're seeing it show up in religions, where all of these religions of the Piscean age were all man-made during the Piscean age, are coming up for grabs to diminish. Once women, and this is a worldwide phenomenon, not just US, once women step into the twos, more further into the twos, so 2020s, 2030s, and gain power, you're going to see the shifts in these countries. And so right now we don't have it yet, especially in the Middle East, particularly in outside of Europe and the US. You have it, you have it some, but it has to get more so, because the female gender is the conscience of a society, and without a conscience, these societies run amok. So it's a real problem until we get the female consciousness raised in the world. So I don't see, Russia wants a Uranus type of revolution. I don't think it's such a Uranus type of revolution at all, tell you the truth. Yeah, it's extremely Saturnian, but we still have to get further out. Russia, again, the people have put this guy in place, and he runs the show. So he's one of these ones where the politician chooses the electors, and he chooses this group and kills everybody else off. So he's the old guard from before World War II. It's a good time to get back to the trade jobs we always need. Absolutely. We need workers in the trades, electricians, plumbers. These are shortage. They say there's about a 10-year shortage of electricians. I believe it. I had a friend who was an attorney in private practice. He quit the practice and he became a plumber and made much more money. So, go figure that one. That's an extreme, but it's very true. And I think people are seeing what's the benefit of a college education as much as it used to be. Again, the rule of the experts. Not that we don't need college education, but is it your ticket to ride everywhere as it used to be? And that's the question as we leave the expert world. Specific like medicine and science will need the expert knowledge. And but many of these people have been thwarted simply because they couldn't get the college they wanted, or, go in that direction. So it is something where, again, we're in this flux, and we're in not only the flux of leaving the male dominated ones of the last 1,000 years and going into the twos for the next 1,000 years. And we're barely into it. 23 years is not a very long time into it. And so we get into that, and then we'll go into further into that, where we get into some of these big scientific breakthroughs, space travel, healing. But the key underneath all this is what we knew all along, is that it's an inside job as far as your own healing, thinking, and not looking to the outside world for their information to direct you like we have done. We followed the yellow brick road all the way down, and we need to go back to ourselves. And particularly in the healing arts, we need to learn how to heal ourselves again. And there's a lot of quackery out there, folks. The experts quote, and some of this business, we need to learn more about our own incarnation, our personal incarnation, and what we came through. Will climate change be solved? Not yet. No. In fact, Hertz just 2 days ago, or in the middle of this last week, sold off its entire EV fleet. They had bought a ton of them because they figured that their car leases would all be EVs. People wanted them. And that was wrong. People didn't, because they weren't enough charging stations and they were too expensive to rent. So they just got rid of them all, and they just put a huge order in, I think, for 20,000 vehicles from the auto industry with gas-powered cars. And so until we get some of these things changed and put our priorities, we're just going to keep, again, until it's a crisis, until, say, Washington, D.C. falls into the sea or something, or we have some huge calamity with weather. We're not going to force a law that affects everybody to make any change. Yeah, and here's Katerina again. Disappointing to see the care about our elders. But the same is true under capitalism. Little care for health care. We couldn't use capitalism to make a lot of this work, what we don't. And so, yeah, this is all part of the change of the last 50 years, the prep for the Reagan era, and then the Reagan era, and that's coming. As I say, it's coming to an end. And so you want to rejoice in that. And so it's not so matter of these people dying off as that the leadership of the country changes. I have a husband he's gone from a boarding care 6-bed place to a very large establishment of assisted living, all different levels, from memory care to independent living. And this type of situation was founded, it's Belmont Village, which is the 37, I think, or 33 of these across the country, mainly focused in the West. And they're based out of Houston. And they started by a woman who had no place to put her mother-in-law in 1995. And so her mother-in-law was called Josephine and Houston. So what she did was founded Belmont Village to found a place to put her, started a place to help her mother-in-law. And this has morphed into a 33 or 37 products of housing. They're all the same. And they're even now in one in Mexico City. And there are 18 of them in California, and they're in pretty higher net worth. My husband's in one in Encino, and they're in, Calabasas, Thousand Oaks, Encino, Newport Beach, La Jolla, Hollywood Hills, Burbank, and just goes on the list of pretty decent areas, Sunnyvale, San Jose, Albany, all these are in California. And what happened is I started to go in the background of this. I thought it was a great idea, but when I put him in here, and the prices are very high, but they give you, quote, all these services. And that's what I needed, because I was doing it all. And I couldn't do it all if I'd go down before he did. Anyway, I did a look-see to see, how does she do this? This thing really grew from 98 when the first one opened. And I found that it's really equity investment firms behind her doing it. So the ownership is really the equity fund. Okay, funding this whole thing. And if you look at all these assisted living places and, Sunrise and all of these joints, not the mom and pop bed and board place, but even some of those, they have a group of those. They're mainly all for-profit organizations. They're all for profit. Now, this is something that really needs to be addressed in America, because the prices for a decent place are going to run you $7,000 to $8,000 and up. And if you have any kind of, I would say closer to $9,000 if you want some services that you're going to need. If you have memory care, well, we're talking $10,000, $12,000 a month. And so I think that it's very important that this get addressed. Will it get addressed? No way, not now. No way. And so, yeah, I don't know who's behind the urgent care facilities. That would be interesting to take a look at, but you could bet there are probably big corporations behind them. Right now, they're a godsend, because I don't have to go to an emergency room to get, a COVID test and get Paxlovid or something. However, who owns them and what's the deal? And these are all for-profit centers. So are most of your hospitals. They're big, they're owned by big big equity funds, Dignity Health, all of these. Providence owns, you know, Cedars, and it's not Cedars, St. John's. You know, Providence has Tarzana, and Tarzana just teamed up with Cedars. So you have these huge for-profit hedge funds, equity, private equity is a lot. And a private equity, you don't know who's the money behind it. Probably a lot of foreign money. So this is the way our country is being run. Less companies on the stock market. It's very dangerous because less and less of us can go to a company. Like I wanted to invest a few years back in the shoe company that I love and I buy all the time, Brooks. And I thought, what a great shoe. I'm going to go buy some Brooks stock because I buy them every year and a lot of other people love them. I go, and Brooks is, I think, owned now by, what's his name? The guy, the big wealthy man, I forget, Buffett, his company. They own Brooks. So there you go. Unless you want to pay few $100,000 a share for Buffett's group, forget it. So this is where we are, folks, and why we have such extremes. You know, yes, they're so high. Established charge 5 to 10 for elder care, extremely low hourly. Yeah, it's slave labor. I'm very familiar. My daughter went to work for one in Burbank, and she starts with a whopping $18 an hour, and they work like dogs. And I couldn't believe she took this. But she loves working. Are you ready for this? She works in memory care. And so she went right for the Alzheimer's, God bless her, the dementia people. And that's who she loves to work with. I'm like, for $18 an hour. What are you, crazy? But I can't say anything. It's her choice. But I know how much they get paid. It's horrible. And I know how much I pay. I pay close to $9,000 a month. And these people are getting $18 an hour. And they're always understaffed, and they can't keep them. They can't keep them because they don't pay them anything. And they work them like dogs because they, you know, on Richard's floor, there are 20 to 22 people with 2 staff people, two. I found all this out after I moved him in there, and it took so long for somebody to come around to answer his call button. And this is not, this is a very upscale place, and that's what it is. That's what they do. And so you want to take a look at this, but nobody is. You know, they don't. I'm shocked. I said, "Oh, don't worry, you're going to get $20." I mean, McDonald's guy is going to get $20, and I'm like, she said, "No, I'm not in that category," or something like that. I'm like, how can you stand this? I don't say, "How can you stand this?" I never say, I'm so glad you love it. I'm so glad. And she will talk about her people like their friends, the neighbors. And on her shift, several people die. And I'm like, you know, or somebody died. I came back this weekend and Debbie was dead. And, you know, and some of them are rude and awful. And I'm like, how do you do this? And I'm like, what happened here? So, you know, yeah, inflation is better. Now, remember, somebody asked a question, Katerina, of inflation. Inflation is different than pricing. There's prices of goods, and then there's inflation. Inflation is very low. It's much lower. It's going lower, and it will go lower. That doesn't mean prices will come down. So there's 2 things when you talk about expensive are prices and inflation. You know, so yes.
Gail?
Yes, Rita.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Golly. Are you still going to Holy Spirit?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's actually I do. They have some really good programs there. Yes. Could you talk a little bit more about the numbers? You talked about this is a universal year of 8, what 8 means. I happen to do a little segment on, I guess, the Virgin Mary. She's born on September 8th. They obviously, that was a kind of they don't know when she was born. So they picked the number 8, which also, if you turn it sideways, it means infinity.
Right.
And I think that was part of it. They put her in Virgo. It's It's a virgin, it's the only female in the
Yeah.
signs, so it's done all unconsciously and all spiritually there. But what does the 8 mean for us? Or
Oh, the 8 is using spiritual principles in the material world. So
Okay.
the circles have to be equal. They cannot be a little top and a small bottom. I mean, a big bottom or vice versa. So when you draw that 8, it has to be equal spheres. And it means the drawdown of the spiritual principles from above into the material world below.
okay, and then when you turn it sideways, it's infinity.
Yes, because one goes into the other. It's a
Mhm.
constant. You draw it without even lifting your pencil. You just continually draw it.
Yes.
It's a
Okay.
continual, it's one of the most powerful numbers, but very few people know that it's about bringing the spiritual into the material world. And people, when they think they have a big 8 life path, they think, oh, money and power and blah, blah, blah. It's using spiritual principles in the material world, learning the law, the universal laws of materialism and manifestation. And most people don't know how to do that. So we are going to be experiencing that this year. Also, 8 is considered ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is considered the lord of karma. And so as you reap, you will sow. And that's kind of year it's going to be. It's an 8 year, and it is a year of reaping. So what did we sow over the last 8 years?
Okay.
So where are the areas that can be affected by this?
So I went onto your little blog before I got on and to try to find out what number this year is for us. So you take the universal year of 8, you take the month you're born, which
Yeah.
is the number, and then you take the day, you add them all up.
It's a 1, right?
For me, it comes out, I think it's a 1 for what?
Well, I'm talking about for the United States. So
Oh, for the United States. I said,
Yeah,
but
the
for
United States was
individuals, that's
born-
how we would do it for each
Yeah.
of us individually.
Yeah, you would
I-
do this for each of you individually. You would take your month and day to the universal year 8. And if you do it for the country, the universal year for America is a 1 year. So she has a brand new beginning this year. She's to begin a new way of behaving for the next 9 years. So it's a launch. That doesn't mean you have fruition in a 1 year. It's just your beginning. So America begins a new standard for itself. So it's the beginning of a 9 year cycle. So we should be out of the woods in 9 years. So what we do this year, when
We
you look
survived
at it,
9 years.
each cycle is 9 years. So we're going out into 20, and we'll finish up 2032, which is about perfect. It all works. So that's when we should be done with crisis into our new mode of behavior and cultural changes. But nobody wants to go through that. They all want to go sleep for the next, so many years, whatever.
See, but we women know you have to go through that 9-month cycle to birth a
Yeah.
baby. So
Yeah.
it's
We
like
know. And we also know
the wisdom
one
of the
thing about
feminine.
women is they do better adjusting because their body is constantly making them do that through monthly periods and menopause and all of that. One thing about the female, she's taken out of the workplace to have the children or care for the children. And then she feels the career is over or she was taken out. But the thing about the female does not recognize that her progress and success is in 2 steps. She starts out working, building her career, time out to have the children and raise them, and come back because her run is very, very long. Unfortunately for men, they don't get a chance to step out. So a lot of incompetent men are just passed through into leadership roles, which they don't deserve at all because they really were incompetent. But there was no timeout for them. They just got promoted through to their what have you. So we're going to be changing this. Women have to start looking at their lives in a different way. Any other questions about some of the stuff I talked about before I head out so you guys could get on with your lives? No? Okay. Yeah, Dominique, yes, using the US date, July 4. So you would add the month and day to the universal year, right?
I was going to say one thing, Gail, and that's I talked to my son, who's a scientist. He said in the next 5 to 10 years, they keep having breakthroughs on nuclear fusion.
Mm-hmm.
which will be all the answers that we need to our energy problems, that we could solve all our energy problems. So I keep watching for notices about what they're doing with it.
I don't have a lot of information on nuclear fusion progress. America has been reluctant to invest in any nuclear projects again. I know that
Right.
Bill Gates is very big on this, and he's got a company that he's invested strongly in and has some investors, and they don't make these plants as they used to. They're a very different type of nuclear fusion.
Fusion is not fission, yes.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see other energies, abilities that we have not discovered yet.
Yeah.
And nothing is the answer to everything,
No.
including this one. Nothing is the answer. So, because everything is constantly in a state of creation here. So what is coming, we can't even expect because it hasn't been created yet.
Right.
And that's the excitement, is it hasn't been created yet. And so you can't go ahead and prejudge the future until these things get created and then affect our lives. And same as with the crisis. I don't know what it will be, but it will
Right.
be, because it's the pattern. And one of the things that is pretty normal is to depend on patterns. They don't change. They just continue in the pattern. So we're
agree.
trying to advance. We're trying to come out of our dark ages here.
Well, it's like the universe only allows us enough information to move slowly.
Yeah, information to move slowly. I like that.
Yeah.
Gail,
Yeah.
to our numerologist here, it was mentioned on the TV news that our calendar this year is absolutely a duplicate of another calendar. Did you notice that? The days?
No, I didn't.
Well, we looked it up. I forgot what year it is. It's but what would it mean? What would that mean?
I mean, there's so many calendars.
No, a regular
planet.
standard
Oh.
standard calendar about, I don't know, about 14 years ago, every day falls the same.
Right.
Like the first falls on the same day. You know what I'm talking about, Sam?
That's a normal phenomenon.
Yeah. That's another
Because
cycle.
with the calendar year being 365 days and this being a leap year, 366.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's only, 7 days that the first can start on.
Right.
So normally it skips a day because of the extra day, and then with leap year, so you're always going to have repeats. So if you look back, you'll find that this year the calendar starting on Sunday, January 1st, you can go back and find several years, that it's a repeating thing. It reoccurs at every so many years. So it's not, I know some people talk about, oh my God, this is incredible. It's never happened before. Yeah, it happens. It happens. It's a regular cycle. Okay. It's kind of like the Earth going around the sun and Saturn going around the sun,
I
the
was
moon
just
going
wondering
around
if
Earth.
it had any meaning. If
It may. I'm not discounting. I don't know. I don't know personally any meaning.
I think if there's significance, it has to do with the number of the year.
Mhm.
Because not the year number is not going to repeat.
Well,
But it will repeat at some point.
That's true.
It's kind of, in some ways, it may be similar to the Chinese zodiac, where you've got 12 animals and 5 elements, and they repeat every 60 years. So there you've got a 60-year cycle.
Yeah. And in the period, the Jupiter periods that we're now in beginning also, this is the leap period represented by the middle age. So the women coming into power should be middle age. So anywhere from the late 30s up will be middle age, will be the focus of women, middle aged. And that period is a 20-year prep to prepare, 20 years of power, intense power, and then 20 years of integration of this into the society. And that's a 60-year cycle. And that's from the I Ching, and it's called the Jupiter period. There's 9 of them. And the Li is the last one, or the Li, L-I. And it's always represented by the middle daughter or the middle-aged female. So that's what you're going to see coming into power, these middle-aged females. that think that they're, either their career is over or they get appointed or elected. Very important to pay attention to this, that really nobody's talking about.
Yeah.
The rise of these females into these positions. All of a sudden, they're just going to be there. They just, you notice that many of the people in politics, because this is the easiest area for women to enter besides nursing homes, are females into power. That doesn't take any college degree. It's basically a network, and women network very, very well, but they don't network very, very well into power. They network with friends and family and local stuff, but they don't network into the real shows of power, the money, the finance, and the upper government. So these you have to get your network, and then you grow and you go and you get higher and higher. So the name of the game is create influence. So you're going to see this trend. It's already in place. It's been preparing for 20 years. And now we start the next 20 and then the final 20. So I've been a 60-year period, which Jim was talking about. These cycles continually repeat,
Mhm.
and
We're
bring in
starting to see
society's
that.
big changes.
Yeah, we're seeing that, Gail, with the squad, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib, and this younger pack of women that are they're at their, well, like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez got elected during her first Saturn return at the age of 29. So I think that was that first wave that we're seeing finally
Yeah.
in American politics. But we're really starting to see that.
You're going to
during
start to
every
see more of these
election.
younger women
Yeah.
age into significance, I guess is the right word. They'll have more influence. The name of the game is, I don't care whether it's finance, anything, whatever area, healthcare, it has to be an influencer. So you're hearing this term around the nation of these influencers. And TikTok, I tell you, I never would have considered it, but I'm now considering doing TikTok and teaching numbers and numerology on TikTok. And one of the big, I know this is weird, one of the big growing groups are grannies on TikTok. And the Wall Street did a huge, almost a one-page article on it. And they have agents and they have sponsors, and they, not of course everyone, but these numbers are startling. And because the ages that watch TikTok is very young. And so they just love these older, authentic people who really basically don't have any hidden agenda. They didn't hire professionals. One woman who started this really just was bored, and she was 90, she's 93, and she started to do these on her cell phone and then upload it. And she has huge numbers. I mean, income. I'm like, huh? Wow. One of them here is in Woodland Hills. And I'm like, she's in her 80s and she's a hoot. And all of these women look pretty awful. I mean, nobody's made up. They all look like they're tired and worn. and they're completely loved by this younger generation who finds them very authentic, and pretty much all they do is give advice of how they live their life. That's it, pretty much.
Hey,
Yeah.
Gail, would you, there was one of the questions in the chat. Would you be willing to talk about the individual numbers for each number real briefly?
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. If you add the month and day to the universal year, which we said was 8, okay, 2024. And is that right? Yeah, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2
Great.
and 2 and 4, 8.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, I begin to, gosh. So it comes out to a 44, which is a master number a year. So we got to get these things right and basically use spiritual principles in the material world. So you would take your 8 and you would add it to your month and day. So if you have a number 1, this is a year you have to begin new things for the next 9 years. It's your seed planting year. Okay, so plant seeds. Stop living in the past and get them going, and don't be lazy about it. Connect, meet people, do things that you've been waiting to do for the last 9 years. Go ahead. Okay, so it's a beginning and you don't wait for approval from anybody. And then number 2, you have to learn patience, tend to the garden you planted in your 1 year. So it's important that you plant it. In a 2 year, it's patience, cooperation, persuasion, not force. And do not tell your plans and secrets to anybody, even your significant other. You have to let the force grow. You have to let the seed get roots. You do not go and weaken it by talking about it. Talk weakens. Okay, be careful what you say. Very much so. When I was up in the Bay Area, my son in San Francisco, anyway, I was up there and I had to get this mailing out for my class I did yesterday. And so I had to use his PC going on everything. And I did this on MailChimp. And so he said, what do you think? And I said, I want to have 50 people there. I want to have 50 people there. I'm like, whoa, that'd be good, Mom, blah, blah. So then comes the beginning of the week. I now have like a grand total of like 20. And I'm like, well, I did say I wanted 50. And I had a lot of, I had good energy or emotion behind it. So I said, okay, I asked for 50. I'm gonna, it's up to you all. I'm doing the reminders and all that jazz. And you have to really come through here because I did my part. And by Wednesday, I had like 10 more. Anyway, I ended up with 55.
Oh.
And it was my intention. And it was something that the only time I said this out loud was to my son. And then I shut up. Do not go off and talk about, because it weakens what you're going to do. Keep your own counsel in a 2-year. Okay. 2 is very important. You're very vulnerable in a 2-year. So people say they like your idea, but you can read their mind. We all can. And they don't believe it. So shut up in a 2-year of your plans. Number 3, here's your year where you network and expand what you planted, change your appearance, improve your network, and completely do creative work this year. So it's expanding what the seeds you planted. And some of the seeds that you planted, this is when you start to see them come through, is in a 3-year. And then the 4-year, you have to be very disciplined, structured, organized, methodical, roll up your sleeves and work. It's not a fun year. It's a productive year. You have to be extremely practical in a 4-year. Okay. It's a good year. It rewards you, but only if you did the work and lay the foundation, and don't complain. It's hard work. Okay. It only is 1 year. 5 years change. Here's when you make your marketing and you make your changes. You do everything you can in the 5-year to really, really promote yourself and market. And don't always expect everybody to help you, but in a 5-year, it's okay to promote yourself. Okay, going into a 6-year, this is a year of responsibility, commitment, tending to your health, improving your nutritional needs, a lot of responsibility. It can be overwhelming. I just finished a 6-year and oh my God, I hope I never repeat it. There's so many health issues, so many things I had to be responsible for with my husband. I didn't know at the end of the year, I just said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And really by December 1st, I put him in another facility because he would get more care, even if it cost me more money. I physically can't do it. And it took me all year of that grind and agony and getting injured and sick myself to finally say, I'm done. I'm and here I am in my 7-year, which is always about rest, restoration, and recovery. And I completely feel it. I mean, I ended up injuring myself. I got bronchitis so many times. I'm now on an inhaler and I have to go back to the pulmonologist this Tuesday, and all came in a 6-year. I have to be more careful about what I eat. And it's all, and not so that I can eat anything, but I certainly should avoid certain foods. And this year taught me that I really need to do that. And that's a 6-year commitment, commitment, commitment. I was committed to getting him settled and right and take care of him. And then I was very committed to my own saving myself. And so that's where I am in a 6-year worn out. I don't want to do it anymore. And I can tell it's working because he doesn't call me like he did all the time. I can go days, I never hear from him. It's wonderful. And so that's a 7-year where I'm focused on myself. I'm considering making some plans. That would be a TikTok if I do that. If I do that, I'll go into hiding first, and then I will have other people help me with that. But plans that I can finally start making. I'm even thinking maybe later in the year I could travel somewhere. I mean, wow. And but you have to go through that awful grind of the responsibility of the 6th year. If you have karma in that area, God help you. You'll have to do it whether you like it or not. Like if your brother gets in jail, you get to bail him out. I mean, this is 6th year. It's responsibility, whether you like it or not, you got it. And the 7th year is about recovery and restoration, planning, going away, taking a retreat, going to school, great year to go to school. It's a year to be selfish. The 7 is the self, focus on the self. Soil rests in the 7th year, and so do you. So that's what you do. You rest, recover, and stop trying to be so productive. Now we come to the 8th year. That's the big harvest year. Saturn, what did you seed plant those 7, 8 years ago? Okay. Did you recess in the 7th year? Okay. And thank you, Wave, whoever Wave is. Where's Wave? Wave
I
left.
just left.
Okay.
It's
And I don't know who Wave is. I probably do. Oh, anyway. So the 8th year harvest. Okay. Look good, act like money, dress like money. You want money, you got to act it, you got to look it. Even if you have 2 nickels, I don't care. This is where you learn how to manifest, is in your 8th year. Take care of your time. Time is the most important asset you have. I mean, if you don't have time here, you're not going to stay. You're over. You're done. You get hit by a car, you have no more time. Time is huge. People underestimate time. And so time, energy, and money are what you focus on this year. Harvest what you planted 9 or 8 years before. The number 9, you clean it up. It's your ending year. Remember I said, when we get to the 9 years from now, 2032, really, we finished up 2032, we'll be in a very different, a much better place for America than it is today, where we have to start all these kind of painful changes. How does your life path? Well, if your life path interacts with your personal year, if you're an 8 life path, it can be very helpful if you're in an 8 year. Okay. If you're anytime, if you're in a 4, then you need to work hard on what your things are you planted in an 8 in your first year. But 8 has to learn the laws of manifestation. It's a key lesson of the number 8 life path, is to learn the laws of manifestation. How do you, most people, they all focus on how. And it's not about how, it's about what. You see, the unseen world is the world of the how. The unseen world is the invisible world, is where you do the how. They do it. I mean, I didn't know how anymore to get more people to come to my thing, except send out reminder. That's it. And anyway, it's up to them. They knew better than I did. They can see better than I do. So I call them my senior partners. So learning the laws of manifestation, you must, number one, expect divine assistance. And most people don't. And most people doubt. And you can't. If you doubt, you won't. And that's it. So people say things, but they don't really believe it because their behavior undermines them regularly all the time. And what they say undermines what they want, because they're not focused on what they want. They're focused always on the how. How am I going to move? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? How? You can't ever surrender that way. And so this is the 9 year. Okay.
I found a sticker at the bookstore that I volunteer at, and this is kind of my motto for the year. I don't know if it has to do with money, but it says, is it backwards to you when you put
Yes, I can see
Yeah,
it.
I can see it.
It said,
That's great.
They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds.
Isn't that great?
Isn't that a great sticker?
Oh,
It's
that's
on
a
my
great-
journal. It's on
I
my
love
journal
it.
for the year. Yeah.
I love it. It's true. That's what we are. We're seeds from the universe. We can never be killed off. We're phantom, we're sounds. We're here. We're going to have many more incarnations. And I'll probably meet you all in some other place and time, so that we'll have coffee or the equivalent, whatever. Maybe we'll be back in a place where we can all meet in person, instead of, I think people are going to hunger for a sense of community. One of the big things about a detachment that I mentioned earlier about Aquarian is the loneliness of America. Because Americans prided themselves on individual. One of the things that people come here is the lesson of the 5 here in this country is to learn to be an individual. Well, what's the price you pay for that? You leave your tribe, is loneliness. Now we have left tribes. We've broken up tribes that came here. So these big extended families are now going off and, living 3,000 miles apart and everything else. So we're breaking up tribes to learn individualism, and it's resulted in a tremendous problem of loneliness in America. And we're talking about it, but nobody's going to do anything about it. We're going to put it over here with the elderly and the seniors, or with the lack of health care, or, whatever, child centers, whatever. So we need new management. Now, if we were a corporation, we'd get rid of the management.
Yes.
We get rid of the board of directors. That's what we need to do. We need.
Well, one of the things you talk about the senior centers, they get community
Yeah.
when they get community, and it's all about.
This is the reason I put him in there, because the place where he was at, there were 6 beds, a beautiful home, like close to 4,000 square feet, and he had a beautiful room, French doors into the garden. However, there was nobody to eat with at the
There's
dining
nobody.
table.
Yeah.
Everybody was completely bedridden except him in a wheelchair. So that's why he would annoy me with these phone calls. Just call to say hello. Well, don't, because because he has problem, of dialing or whatever, or getting through to me. I mean, one time I was so sick, and I had to tell him, stop annoying me, and to put a stop to it. And anyway, he finally, I just said, I can't do this anymore. You got to go to a place where you can interact with other people. And
Yep.
so this place has something called a circle of friends, and they do things. And he's gone out on they have a big bus van, and they take wheelchair on it. So he's going to the movies, he's going to the restaurants. Go. I'll pay for this. That's what I'm doing. Because I said, well, even if I have just a year of this, I'm doing this because I need it and he needs it.
It's
And
all about relationships. The whole thing.
it's about the energy of other people. They're all in the same boat. They all have severe issues, and he's not in memory care. I call it memory care light, because he has some of these issues, but not Alzheimer's or dementia, but definitely has problems. So this is what we all crave. We crave a sense of community, and he's getting it there. It's an interesting group. Very interesting group.
But that's true for all of us. I mean, all the clients.
All of us need it.
It's all about lack of good relationships.
Yeah. I mean, and you as a therapist hear this all the time.
Yeah.
And until America understands itself, it doesn't, that it's longing for a sense of community, and it does everything not to have it. But I can,
Yeah, because we were bought, it's about, America's about the individuals.
Yeah, well, yeah. So how's that working for you, America? Not. And it got worse with.
Well, they have to be individual. They have to be individualized so they can come back to a community more aware. And
so you have to go through the epiphany moment. You have to hang on the cross until you find out how much you needed people. I can remember my husband, when I first met him, he said, well, it's not really good to need anybody. I'm like, what? I came from a big family and I have 4 kids, and I'm like, who? And where'd you get that one from? But now he needs everybody. What a lesson. Mm-hmm. He has to be taken care of. He has to go to the bath. Somebody has to help in the bathroom. Somebody has to wheel him around, has to dress him, all this stuff. Yeah, he's in constant need of people.
But there's a ton of people of many, many generations that have really been suffering under capitalism and workaholism that have caused them to move away from family. Or the other issue, because I've been involved with teachings for so long, that a lot of people have escaped really very dysfunctional families.
Oh,
they've had to build prosthetic family, and Rita, as a therapist, and healthy families. And a lot of the online groups, I can't believe how many thriving online groups where I meet up with people, not even all over the country, but all over the world.
All over the world.
On a weekly basis to reconstitute tribal familial bonds, when a lot of people have been abandoned, fostered, abused, neglected.
Right.
So we're creating ways for those solutions simultaneously.
I think that's one of the main success of the 12-step programs. They have people of the same problem, and they bond together and they help each other, and they don't feel judged. They feel connected, That's probably
Yeah,
the carrying
for
agent.
whatever reason, if we're just like people who like to bake chocolate chip cookies,
Yeah.
let's get together. It doesn't matter the reason as long as it's legal. And but it's this that people long for sense, so they make them up. You know, we have meetups and things. We have to make them up. There was a book, well, at least 20, 30 years ago that came out, Bowling Alone. And it was a sample of this author had written about the loneliness of America. Even your bowling alleys are all, you know, I went bowling in August for the first time, like 15 years. And I beat everybody. It was wonderful. And I pulled a hamstring and I was so severely in pain. I was so out of shape. It was seriously terrible. And the only saving grace is I beat everybody, including my grandsons. And you know, they want a rematch. I said, I didn't say I can't, I'm in agony, but it was just wonderful to be bowling again. And all the groups, when I thought of that author, he wrote about a situation in Kansas of all places, and Bowling Alone, how the bowling groups were going and America was going into this isolationism. And that's what we have today. It's even more severe with a lot of the detachment going on, where, you know, I've yet to speak to somebody that I've called in to my husband's pain management place, where I get to, when I call it, speak to anybody live ever. It's on this software program called Clara, and you have to call back, send a text, and they'll communicate you by text. So they screw up a lot and made big mistakes. They don't get back to you. It took me over a week to get a prescription filled.
Hey,
I
Gail,
started
was
on a
there-
Tuesday. The following Wednesday, because they had so much misinformation on their texts and stuff. So this is very isolating, this type of care, especially if you didn't have your marbles. Who's going to advocate for you?
Yeah.
Gail, when your hamstring heals, you can come over to Highland Park in Northeast Los Angeles. And one of the vintage bowling alleys has been renovated into a very contemporary Gothic bar, restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And midnight bowling. So when you're
Yeah, I
get your
still have not,
procedure-
it's still not healed. In my physical therapist says, don't do any lower limb activity. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Sit and make it worse? Because it does. You sit and that's what we all do, is sit, and it makes it
Pilates.
worse.
Right.
Pilates on the mat.
Yeah, what?
Pilates on the mat.
Yeah, Pilates is very, very good. You're right. I should do that. You're right.
Pilates on the mat.
Thank you.
I know.
Pilates on the mat. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot cheaper than the other with whatever.
But
That's a
also, don't you think that the technology has increased that too? Because I remember as a kid, I loved to sit around my uncle's family. They would sit around the dining room table and everybody talked to each other and they
Oh,
talked about
yeah.
everything. And now I go in a restaurant and I see 4 people sitting there and everybody's on their whatever it is. And they're not talking. There's nothing going on.
I
They're
know.
just
Yeah,
It's
I
true.
was worried about my
They're
grandson. He
texting
was
with
on.
each other.
They text to each other. My grandson was sitting with 2 other friends, one on either side, and they were texting each other.
Yeah, I know.
And they're sitting there and they're texting each other.
I was
Yes.
worried about my grandson, of course, you know, always on the computer and always on his phone. Except for the last 2 years, he's been in marching band.
Oh,
And when
that's
I go to
good.
see him there, he's like has to relate to these other people, even if it's just to watch what they're doing. So he's in step with them, you know. And I notice how he's learning how to be in community and his moves, and what is that called? How we affect somebody else. It's like you all have to kind of work together.
Well, you learn because you learn to see the effect you have on someone else.
Exactly.
And the only way we can get that is to be with someone else. Also, the tone of the voice is extremely important. I didn't mention this, but you need to run away and get out of situations that are loud. This is very, very damaging to you to be in loud situations. So the restaurant is loud, leave. If people are shouting, leave. It's just very important that you not do that, and do not talk too fast. And stay away from people that have very shrill voices. You know, they're just unpleasant sounds.
My new hearing aids do that. It'll adjust to if I'm in a crowd, it'll come down. If I'm listening to television, it gives me another level. And then there's the normal level. Well, that's interesting. And you can turn it up or turn it down.
There's a theory that in the ancients that you are given so many breaths when you are reincarnated, and not to waste them. Not to
Yes.
waste them. So Jim has a program. I'm gonna give this to Jim. I've talked long enough. Thank you,
Well,
Jim.
thank you so much, Gail. It's always a pleasure to have
It
you
was
with us.
great.
Thank
It
you.
was just great.
And
I think it was great.
Thank you.
yeah,
There's
it's
so much
just
information. I'm going to do a recap in June of my report I did yesterday, the annual report I usually do for people. It was about,
Mhm.
well, it was an hour and a half on Zoom recorded, and then I was an extra 20 minutes. We just did Q&A after it. And then I could see people really wanted it. So I'm going to do a recap in June after you get the primaries, after you see some of these start to happen in this country.
Yeah.
And that will be very important too.
Yes.
Did you do numerology for Trump and Biden to see what
I
what
did Trump
what
and
are,
Biden a long time ago. I did theirs. Biden
what
has an 11 life path. He's a master number. Trump is a 4. Trump is extremely smart, but he's terrible self-esteem, very bad. I mean, he's still
Hmm.
trying to prove his father. That's what he's doing. I think he has a learning disability, an
Yes.
inability to manage.
He's ADD.
Yeah, he could be
That too.
ADD,
Yeah.
and he's got a short fuse, but he's very, very smart. He's very sarcastic. He's but he's really, really smart. But he has a 4 life path, so basically he doesn't like change.
Yeah.
He's
No
some
kidding.
part of him is very traditional, whether it's for good or bad, traditional. And Biden, because he's full of Scorpio, and he is an 11 life path, and he's a water sign. He's so much water that it seeks its own level, shall we say. So he always sees the other person's point of view. So he's very slow to handle a situation or to make a decision, or he can be extremely indecisive. He's not the best leader. He's a good bureaucrat. He stayed in the Senate where it was safe, worked a committee and just stayed there forever. And now he does everything by committee again. He has a wicked temper. You don't see that, but he is completely water seeks its own level. And he is too indecisive to be the leader we need. I think he only has one fire sign. I think it's Sagittarian. But basically he's water. And basically he's 11. 11 makes it's wonderful, it's inspiring, it's, channels and all that kind of stuff. However, it can be extremely indecisive. It doesn't really want to make a decision. And look at him with this business with Austin, this defense guy. He said, "Oh, that's okay. You don't have to tell me. You were, whatever." This guy should be fired.
But wouldn't 11 become a 2?
If you base it down, yeah. And then you're still indecisive. It's still a 2.
Yeah.
Still
Let's see,
too many sides of an issue. A 2 doesn't like to choose.
if I'm calculating correctly, I think isn't this a 1 year for Trump and a 3 for Biden?
Well, Trump is born on the 14th, so he's a karmic debt right
Yeah.
there, 14. Okay, so he's 5, and what is the 6? 11, 2. So
Mhm.
it's a
Okay.
yeah. So what is it? So it's a 1 year for him. Is it a 1
Mhm.
year? Yeah.
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 Yeah. He's a 1
8,
year,
2,
so
10.
he has to begin a new beginning. This is an old beginning for him to go back to what he was.
You mean like repeating?
Yeah,
the
he's
same?
going back to what he was.
And
Something about it. He has a karmic debt on the physical level. So even if he got elected, I doubt he would finish his term.
Mm, mm. And what year is Biden?
Uh,
What is he born? 11? I don't know his date of
11,
birth.
November 20th.
November 20th,
So he's a 4.
1942. November 20th,
So I was a 2.
1942.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a
Or
4.
8, 12, 13. It's a
So
3.
he has a decent life path. I mean, he has a decent year. He has a 3, network expansion and all that. I think you remember his chart is dead in the water from February until May, transition month, and then skyrockets beginning in
Okay.
June. He's
Okay.
going to
Why-
win. He's going to win back these swing states. He's going to do so much better after May.
What is it that tells you that?
Some Vedic astrology
Oh.
and some of
Yes.
his numbers. I like to use Vedic
I s- I
astrology
s-
more.
I saw that on Gourmet You know, Gourmet.
Oh, Singh.
Yeah, and
He's in Beverly Hills. I've never gone to him.
well, I see his newsletters every once in a while, and he's on my Facebook, and
Oh,
he
he
just
gets a newsletter. That'd be good.
yeah, he just said that things are skyrocketing right when
Yeah.
you said, yeah,
Well,
that's
you see, yeah. And so, I mean, he's been in a terrible slump, Biden, and making it
yeah,
worse.
mhm,
Everything he does seems to make it worse.
right,
He just doesn't have fire. I wish he had fire.
yeah.
You know, I don't know what he is in Vedic astrology. He's a Scorpio. Is he a Scorpio, Biden? Yeah,
I
I
don't
think.
know in
Yes.
Vedic.
The good thing about Scorpio is it's a fixed sign. You know,
Yeah,
so
but all the
once he's,
Scorpio planets are in the 12th house.
you know, so once he makes up his mind, he makes up, you know, finally, look at him with, well, the Afghanistan. I don't, you know, that thing went on, and I mean, he could have closed shop, or, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden he does it, you know, and in a poor way. I don't know
Mhm.
who was instrumental in putting that together. But anyway, go ahead, Jim. You go ahead and do what you.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So Biden he's a late Scorpio, so he would still be a Scorpio in Vedic astrology.
Oh,
And
really?
from now with Afghanistan, Trump had put that plan in place and into action, and it was, a choice not change it, but to make the
His
best of it,
choice
I
was
guess.
not to change that or put his own stamp on it, and he didn't do
Yeah.
that. He should have done that. We didn't need to
Yeah.
lose the people we lost, and we didn't need to go that way. And we should
Yeah.
have left some kind of crew there like we do. We have like 250 what I call lotus pads or lily pads around the world, where we have these small base operations of Americans, and there's about 250 of them. And we should have
Yeah.
left one there. Not that, and maybe we do, but I don't know about it. There's a
Yeah.
lot we just don't know. In fact, you know, one of the reasons that we support Israel so much is they do a lot of our dirty work. You know,
I
Uh,
didn't know that.
what?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they do. They have for years.
Hmm.
We store all our weapons for the Middle East, we store them in South Korea and in Israel. So
Oh,
we have a
interesting.
huge weapon arsenal of that we store there. If anything goes off in that part of the world, it's there and we can access it. And so we have it there and they're accessing it. Israel is accessing it. And also we have it in Korea, so they can access it for Asia.
Do we have any in Taiwan?
Not that I'm aware of. It's in
No.
Korea. It's much safer in Korea,
Yeah.
but
I keep wondering if the Chinese are really going to, they keep saying they're going to do something with Taiwan, but
they're not in a position to do that.
right,
no, not yet.
not yet.
If they're going to try something, it's a few years off.
Yes, a few years off for sure. Yeah. They're
Uh,
financially, they got economic problems. Big
Mhm.
economic problems.
Yeah, what I have, let's see, I tried that. Where did it go? Here it is. Uh, okay. Come on. Just a few things date wise that I wanted to cover. Uh, the Iowa caucus is ongoing right now, and of course the weather is not cooperating. So, um, the a date that could be interesting is January 20th.
Maybe the weather is cooperating.
Yeah, maybe it is. It's karma. Um, and for those of you who get up early or go to bed late, uh, the day starts like at 5:46 in the morning with the sun conjunct Pluto. And then just like a matter of minutes later, the moon will trine Pluto, and then the moon will trine the sun. Then the sun and the moon go void of course, and then Pluto goes void of course. And by 6:07 in the morning, we've had these three significant aspects, plus the moon has moved into Gemini and the sun has moved into Aquarius. Then you get into the afternoon, later in the
20th.
afternoon, Pluto will return to Aquarius. And then in the evening, Mercury finally leaves their shadow.
So what
So
does
there's a
that
whole,
mean? What does that mean though on the 20th? That's Saturday. What does that mean for
it just means
us?
it'd be a very active day,
Very
energetically
active day.
speaking.
Like be prepared to kind of be aware and change maybe what's going
Yeah.
on for yourself?
Be extra, be extra alert. Whereas I remember, oh God, way back when, I'm dating myself for some of the younger folks. Uh, remember they used to talk about, be alert. The world needs more alerts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you remember that, yeah, you have
Yes.
like a round sign that said, "Be alert. The world needs more alerts." Yeah, that was a catch from the late '60s, early '70s. Um, on the 22nd, Venus is going to go void of course. On the 23rd, it's the New Hampshire primary. Mars returns in bounds, and then Venus enters Capricorn. We have the full wolf moon on January 25th. On January 26th, hopefully, current moon wobble will be ending. Uranus will station direct at 19 Taurus 5, at which point all planets will be in direct motion. And that gets kind of like, it's called like pure progress because there are no retrogrades to pull you back, slow you down, impede people. So that's going to be a good time to really start making things happen, to get stuff started. Then on February 3rd, Mercury will go void of course, and on the 4th, they enter Aquarius. On February 7th, Saturn will hit 7 Pisces 13, which is where he stationed retrograde last year. And so he goes into his pure progress zone, which is the zone, that short zone of 5 to 7 degrees that he only transits one time. So it's kind of like amping up the pure progress. So if you really want to, start planning with Uranus going direct, and then come February, the week, like a week before Valentine's Day, that's when you can really, things should be more energetically receptive to pushing forward, to getting things started, to doing things. On the 9th, we have the first super new moon, and then that marks the beginning of the Chinese New Year of the Dragon. September 11th is Santa Monica Astrology Meetup. We're going to be talking about family dynamics, love, and war at home. Normally you think of February, Valentine's month, it's a month of love and relationships and stuff. And normally we talk about finding love within for yourself. I thought we'd deal with the family for a change because we all grow up in one of some kind, and we live within one of some kind. So the family can, and I think maybe with the Aquarian age, that concept of family is going to might be shifting, where it's going to be, with the E world, we start to develop our own E family. Oh, I've got 3,000 Facebook friends. Well, yeah, and do you know any of them? Have you met any of them personally? Well, no. Yeah, but so we start to do that kind of thing goes on. On the 12th, Mars is going to go void of course and then enter Aquarius. On the 13th, Mars will conjunct Pluto. And on the 14th, Venus goes void of course before entering Aquarius on the 16th. So Valentine's Day, you may not be quite as happy or as positive as people might like. So it's a day to, it's a time to be more tuned to your relationships, partners, and the like, and what each other needs. The Mars conjuncting Pluto is significant because during 24, Mars is going to conjunct Pluto. The next he will conjunct Saturn, then Neptune, then the North Node, then Chiron, then Jupiter, and then Uranus, or Uranus and then Jupiter, all before he goes retrograde in Leo late in the summer. So you've got all those conjunctions coming up, plus he's going to be making squares to them. So that
Hey,
he's going to
Jim.
be asked, basically Mars is going to make significant aspects to everybody from Jupiter out.
Can I
Especially
just jump in with some research, Jim, on that?
Yeah.
In regards to those Mars conjunctions, I found a recent video by Wade Caves, who's a really wonderful traditional astrologer, highly praised academically and a beautiful speaker. And he's shown the research since 1917 that when Mars conjuncts Saturn, Israel, if you're following the Israel-Palestine issues specifically, that when Mars conjuncts Saturn, Israel takes power, and when Mars conjuncts Jupiter, Palestinians take power. There's a recent lecture of his up on SkyScript on YouTube if you're interested. Because symbolically, Israel is represented by Saturn, even since ancient times.
Yeah, could you maybe
I can
post
post
that
it.
link?
Yeah,
Is,
will do.
is there a link you could maybe either post for the group to our
Yeah.
chat and I can send it out, or even to the
Yeah.
Facebook group?
Yeah, will do.
It's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I know Void.
Yeah, I just wanted
That's
to
what
add
else.
that piece. So it's going to be interesting because those themes are coming
Mm-hmm.
up. And he cites Abraham Ben Ezra Ebenezer, the Jewish astronomer, astrologer, historian in the Middle Ages that identified the Jewish people with Saturn as a point of pride. So I'll put that in the chat.
Okay. Thank you, Katarina. Let's see. March 10th is Women's History Month, and we'll be talking about the eclipses because we're going into eclipse season. And the first big one is going to be the total solar eclipse on April 8th. But we'll also talk about intercepted signs. Somebody requested we talk about that. And these are, kind of, we're fluid. Let me put it that way. April 14th, somebody had asked about the North Node, and so I'm do a little eclipse review because it'll be right after the eclipses, and we can see what's happening with folks and maybe talk about the North Node. And then Spencer and I were also talking the other day about just talking about stuff, things like the most elevated planet, unaspected planets, most aspected planet, and their significance. There's something called the last planet touched by the moon prior to birth, and the significance of that planet. So there's a lot of these little things that people, that you can look at to give you a little more that might provide some other insight. There's hemisphere analysis. You can look at, if you look at just the 10 planets and how they are distributed between the 4 hemispheres, north, south, east, and west, quadrants, the emphasis by hemisphere can give you some indications in terms of how people are, their basic orientation. But we'll be doing stuff on that coming up in the months ahead. And then with Cornelia, your book.
Yes.
So we will figure out how we want to do that. We may do it as a one of our regular meetups, or we may just do that as a special one and send invites out to people.
It's about a new birth date for the United States. It's a totally different chart. It's the sun in Capricorn. And it accounts for a lot of things when you look at it. And I tied it up with events in our history. So hopefully that'll come out this year. It's at the publishers now. But it's all about the United States. And it's fun to read right now. I mean, it seems to be working out quite well because what's happening in my chart of the United States is a repeat of what happened in the revolution, because it is a Gemini ascendant and Uranus is going through the 12th house. And we'll go into Gemini, so it'll be going over our ascendant. I don't remember when exactly, but when it does, I expect that's when we'll really see a lot of changes. Because the nice thing about it, it's going to be trining Pluto at the same time for
You want to put on
eight
your
years.
That's
you
one.
want to put on your get out your crystal ball and put on your fortune teller hat and give us any thoughts on what 24 election looks like based on your charts?
Well, yes, what I did was I did a chart of the Republican convention.
Ah.
And the last day of the convention, Trump is going to have Uranus squaring his Mars and Mars squaring his ascendant. So I don't think that looks too good for him. And his solar return isn't too good either.
And in case you can't tell, I'm smiling under my beard.
Could you give us the year of this 115 date?
What?
What's
Oh,
the
you're
year?
Oh, yes, it's January 14th, 1784.
Okay.
It's after the
114,
revolution.
84.
It's an interesting story. I just happened on it by accident. That nobody ever talks about the fact that we didn't become a sovereign nation until the Treaty of Paris was sent back to America and the states had to ratify it. And that wasn't until January. Otherwise, it would have had to have been renegotiated, which they didn't want to do because then they might not get such a good deal. So they had a 6 months window. I think it was in October they signed it in Paris, and then they had 6 months to ratify it. And then they announced in the newspaper that we are now a sovereign nation recognized by the world. And it gave their boundaries. And I thought that sounds really interesting. So I started researching that. And that's how we came up with the book. I've been working on it for two years now.
Wow.
Aren't there two founding fathers that both died on July 4th?
Yes, Adams and who was it? I know it was Adams and somebody else.
They both died on July 4th, right?
Right. I
Interesting.
think it was maybe Jefferson. I can't remember.
I
Anyway,
think it was Jefferson.
it takes a long time to do research on these. I had to go to the archives. I got the actual congressional meeting that day. And so I had to figure out a time for it. In fact, I read through the whole thing because they had to do a roll call and they were waiting for this man who had to get out of a sick bed to come there because they didn't have a quorum. And
There's a musical about that,
about what?
about the signing and how they had to wait for some of these other people. I don't know what the musical's called, but
1776.
I think so. And they keep talking about this one representative from one state who was not there or who was ill, and they kept trying to contact him or something.
Yeah, but if you look at this chart, it's really totally different. And the configurations explain the only opposition it has is between Saturn and Uranus. And if you look at historical cycles, we swing between those periods of conservatism and then liberal times like the 60s, followed up by the silent majority of Nixon after that. So it's kind of interesting that it really has a lot to do with events in our history.
What time do you set it for? 12, 11, 4 in the afternoon?
1:30 in the afternoon. I put 1:31, I think, because I happened to see a number. I saw a clock or something. I said, well, that's a good time because they supposedly met at noon, but you have to realize this was in January and traveling was very difficult on the roads. And that's why it took them so long to get a whole quorum. They usually met at noon and then they had to go through the business and whatnot and have a roll call. And then at this particular meeting, the whole treaty was read and they all had to vote on it and then they all had to sign it. So I gave it a time of 1:30.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and it's in Annapolis, Maryland. That's where they were meeting. The Federal Congress, the Continental Congress was meeting at different capitals all the time. They didn't have a set place where they met. They moved from one capital to another. So they went to Philadelphia, they went to New York, they went to Annapolis, Maryland. So they would meet in different places.
Hey,
Interesting.
Jim.
I can't wait to see what it
Oh.
does.
All
Right.
righty.
Yeah, okay, so we'll set up a time and I'll give you a little presentation.
Yay.
That's great. Thank you.
It'll be fun.
Hey, can I mention?
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I
Yes,
have one
Katrina.
because of because we're still really just beginning to talk about 2024.
Mhm.
And something else that Wade mentions and I've been tracking is that not just looking at the Capricorn ingress for the quarter, but always looking at the Aries ingress and looking at that Aries ingress chart for the year in relation to your location, whether that's New York, Washington, Cairo, um,
That's a very
Jerusalem,
important date.
etc.
Did you know
Yeah,
there's a
looking at that important date. And what I wanted to make a point about was that in 2022, at the Aries ingress, and again in March of 2024, this year coming up, that there's a Venus besiegement. And in traditional astrology, Mars besieged or between two malefics, Mars and Saturn, mark the beginning of the Aries ingress again, this 2024 Aries ingress. It's very significant and sets a tone. It really set a tone for 2022 for the globe. Venus ruling money, ruling relationships, ruling love, femininity, the arts, beauty. We took a huge cultural arts hit all over the world because of the pandemic and the crash of the economy. A lot of serious changes, and it's a moment of besiegement as well for the Aries ingress of 2024. So that is maybe some good homework to take with you for your research if you're so inclined, just so you're prepared. I've seen it happen on global city, and years ago I posted into the note my Facebook page, watch out, there's a Venus besiegement today, so be careful that you don't get stuck between a rock and a hard place. A rock meaning Mars and a hard place meaning Saturn. And
yes.
immediately a friend reported back saying, I had this experience today. Is that what happened when I was stuck at a gas station, Saturn? And she was playing Venus, the role of Venus that day, where a man decided to have a rageaholic attack, that was Mars, at her at the gas station. So it plays out individually and locally, globally, nationally. Just be aware
Right.
if it affects your chart, your nation, your, I don't know, company. Good to know.
Well, that zero Aries is a very important point in the next few years because there's going to be Saturn Neptune conjunction right on that 0 point, and it's going to be sextile to Pluto and Uranus, so it's going to form like a vertex. There's going to
So
be a lot of
Saturn
energy.
Neptune conjunction on the ascendant of the Sibley chart or the global chart?
No, I'm just talking about it in terms of the trances, what's happening on that 0 point. There's going to
Oh,
be a conjunction of Neptune. I think it's in 26.
oh,
I'm
okay.
not
So
sure.
coming up. Oh,
Okay.
wait, it's a ways
So
Yeah.
off.
you'll
Saturn
see
Neptune
all these
conjunction.
changes are coming through.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
everything that Gail said today fits right in with everything I just finished in my book, in my
Oh,
epilogue. Really, what's happening in the
wow.
country.
And
It's happening
ju-
astrologically too. Yeah, Jim.
just okay, I just want to add a little
Yeah.
joy to the mix.
Okay.
The spring equinox also happens as we're moving into a new moon wobble,
And
Okay.
tell
which
the
is
group
that
what that means because we have newbies in the group.
moon wobble is a period of, it seems to be coincide with increased chaos throughout the world. It can be
Oh, great.
natural or man-made, can be storms, earthquakes,
Looks like it's
um,
both this time.
yeah,
Volcanoes.
train crashes, plane crashes, boat sinks. Um,
Where's the
yeah.
good news?
Yeah, he was being a little facetious, as we
Yeah,
know Tim to be
it's
sometimes. Yes.
yeah. I mean, consider what's happened recently. The
Yeah.
earthquake in Japan, moon wobble.
The
So
volcanoes
we're
in
just
Greenland.
volcanoes, right? We had one. The current moon wobble started like on Christmas Eve or thereabouts, and won't end it because they last about a month. And it won't end until, later this month. So yeah, I mean, you had the shooting in Iowa, the school shooting in Iowa, um, just all kinds of chaos, the storms and the chaos that they bring, flooding, uh,
Right.
blizzards. I'm trying to remember the line from Ghostbusters. Uh, Dog sleeping with cats or something like that, or whatever. It goes on. It goes on and on
Dog
into this
sleeping
weird
with
stuff. So
cats. Yeah.
yeah, you know, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my,
And so
yes.
am
But it's never
So
all bad. There's always like we're gonna have this Jupiter Uranus conjunction, and it could be amazing technical breakthroughs. There could be
yeah,
Oh,
ecological
yeah, there is
solutions.
going to be.
Jupiter can
yes,
be
that's.
well, there's so many. It's not just always
Oh no, it's not all bad.
No.
Nothing is all bad.
fortune telling or misfortune telling.
Hmm. Right. And what I find interesting, I don't. The term fortune telling is misleading.
I know I'm being a smarty.
I know, no, but I mean, are you? You're not really. Fortune telling isn't about a fortune. It's really future telling.
It's
You're more talking.
forecasting
You're
the
talking about
weather.
what the future holds in store, not what. And the fortune, maybe if it has good fortune, but it doesn't necessarily have good fortune. But yes, I so many things we call them something and they're misleading. But yes, remember there are only everything has two sides in the universe except rainbows.
Well, I think when it was used in that term, it had a different meaning.
Yeah.
We're talking about your fortune. I'm talking about your future, really.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. We're talking about the future, not necessarily fortune.
Right.
Right, and
Uh,
I'm just kind of tongue in cheek, but also there's a similarity. Like what's his name? Steve Judd said he's not a fortune teller; he's a misfortune teller. But it is it's exactly what we're doing though. So we have to be
yeah.
cautious to say it's weather forecasting, and you can
Yeah.
ride it as you will. You can come with your raincoat and your umbrella, or you can be
Well,
unprepared.
since we're going to talk
Or,
about family dynamics, I'll bring in the whole idea of temperament too, because when you're dealing
yes.
with children, you have to have something positive to talk about. And since every child is born with a temperament and you can figure that out from a chart, then you know what to tell the parents in an ethical kind of way. You're not
Yes,
predicting anything because it's already there.
yes.
And that's a way to help families understand their children.
Yeah.
I.
Right now, we seem to be going through an extended period where temperament is something that we need to deal with all the adults or people that
Exactly.
should be
Exactly.
behaving
Huge,
like adults.
Well, that's why I
huge
just did
issue.
an interview yesterday with somebody from Kepler, and I talked about Trump's chart and his temperament, what his temperament is, and how it affected his bringing up and everything. It made him what he is today
Yeah.
because he didn't fit into his family at all.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean it's interesting because when you start looking at the family dynamics, you start to see where this one sibling doesn't seem to fit.
Yeah,
Everybody
I
else,
had one like that. We were all mutable and cardinal, and I had one child who was all fixed, did not fit in.
Well, they're
yeah,
born not to fit in. They're oftentimes the antidote to the dysfunctional family.
Right.
yeah, or it's
And
they're the one that keeps the family real
well, yeah,
or
keeps them.
grounded
They're
or
usually the
whatever.
cycle breaker. And I get a lot of
Yeah.
clients like
Or
this that,
scapegoat.
well, that's
Okay. Well,
that's the cycle breaker. And I think this is a really important part of this Saturn and Pisces equation because it has the capacity to dissolve these dysfunctional hierarchical paternalistic structures. It has that capacity. That's also
Yeah.
30 years ago when there was a huge influx in the Alcoholics Anonymous uptick and people really started getting solutions, understanding that they weren't drunks, they were survivors of horrifying trauma.
Right.
So we have this cycle of reappearing again. And now we're not just saying save the children, we're saying that there is no, like Gabor Mate's work, that there is no, the myth of normal is his recent book, that there's so many of us that have come, everybody in the room in the whole world has come from some kind of difficulty or challenge that's operating our unconscious. So I think our next step is to rehab adults.
Right. Well, the interesting thing is Dominique, who was here a while ago, she developed a great tool that we use with families. In other words, we do all the temperamental components for each member of the family and see where they might have some conflict or why they might not understand each other or whatever. And it really helps a lot. We had one mother she was exhausted, a Libra, right? Because she had two sons that were constantly battling and she was playing referee. Well, it turned out one kid was an earth fire, one of those steamroller kind of personalities, and he had no water, and the other kid was all water. I said, they're here to teach each other. I said, you have to learn communication skills so they can work it out and you can step back and stop being referee. So you see how, understanding temperament really, really, really gives you a lot of information.
You know what? That's so interesting. And it relates, how we interact as not just biological families or pseudo families or dysfunctional families, because that all exists, but even how we collaborate as a group and understanding better human communication,
Right.
learning how to listen effectively and
Right,
responsibly and
exactly.
respectfully. And that has to set the stage so we can create a better companies, globe, nations, city councils. Like that's really the underpinning. Like we could talk
Yeah,
about
we should be teaching that in high school. I know when I was working for the school district, we had a change I had to go out and talk with parents and then teachers and all the conflicts that they were having. And it was all about communications. How do we sit down? How do we talk? How do we listen? How do we respond?
Yeah.
Yes, if everybody learned that in school, we'd have a lot less problems.
Well, we're actually starting to see that in schools because I've taught as an artist and dancer in residence at all levels, and we have a huge mindfulness education program in schools. But we and parenting classes that are now becoming mandatory in schools because we have so many absentee, untrained, traumatized parents. But we're starting to see that it shouldn't just start at high school. It really needs to start in those first 7 years of life.
Yeah.
And the parents have to get on board with it and participate too. So
Well, I
think
remember we had a teacher that taught families. She talked about mothers, and these are teenagers. She had the boys carry around a pregnancy suit so they could know what it was for the woman. Big heavy, and they had the boys and girls both got an electronic doll that cried and wet and everything, and so they had to be up all night taking care of it, so they really knew what having a baby was like. So they had to have it for a week, and it recorded everything they did, whether they changed them on time or fed them when they were hungry, et cetera, et cetera.
Where was this? In a high school program?
Yes, seen in Sylmar.
In a public school?
Yes, Sylmar High School.
Fantastic.
My son did
It was a fantastic class, and well, let me tell you, those girls, all of a sudden, they didn't have to wait till they had a baby to find out how big it was.
My
They
son
understood ahead.
He was 16 and it was a public school in Missouri. And we went to a Cinco de Mayo parade and he brought the doll with him and he's just walking around carrying it. And kids like in their early 20s were coming up to him and they were like, dude, do you know you're carrying a doll? Like people were freaked out that he was carrying a doll.
Right.
We had the same in high school. My mother sent me to a Catholic school, but we had marriage and family planning class that taught us. We had to do our own budgets, job hunt, resume writing, budgeting for the household.
Yeah, see, these are things kids don't learn. Yeah.
Meal planning, coupon cutting. We were assigned a mate. I got Jason, the Lebanese guy, and we had 2 children, and we all had a flower baby that we had to drag around for a week and not pop the bag, and not. And some people murdered off their children and failed the class. And it was like, wow. I knew I was never going to be a mother anyway, but it was telling. But
I wish somebody had taught me how to handle money. Nobody taught me how to handle money.
Well, that too.
Oh, no, we had to do budgeting.
Yeah, budgeting.
And look for jobs. And, we would have to basically have to apply for jobs from, it was, in the newspaper at the time. You could only look for jobs in the newspaper. And you'd have to pull out of a hat. Did you get accepted or rejected for that job? So if you got rejected, you look for another job. It was all very random, and it was really about life teaching, which we all kind of knew.
Well,
But I
that's
think
good.
these dynamics are very cool, Jim, that bring not just biofamily, but into the greater collective. Like, how do this, you know,
Mhm.
Lebanon treats Israel,
Yeah.
or Russia the family of Russia treats
Mhm.
Ukraine, or
Yeah, because I
Sudan,
mean, you know,
Egypt.
anybody who goes to work in an office setting or a setting where they're working with other people, be it at a plumbing shop, a repair shop, any kind of a business where you go to work, that's your work family,
And
Yeah.
and that
often,
dynamic is exists there. And if you can't get along with them, you're in trouble.
often,
Okay.
often you will repeat the family dynamics that you had around your own dining room table. You will
Yeah,
repeat it in the
'cause-
workplace or in the next family or
right,
whatever.
Right.
because you don't know any different.
Yeah.
Well, you could say that, which is true, but you could also say that it gives you the opportunity to learn, that psyche is there, that
Yeah,
you will recreate the dysfunction until you learn how to heal it or
yeah,
correct it or something like that.
right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
most of us don't grow up in families where we're given, there's a dynamic going on that gives us the opportunity to learn how to
No, not,
change the family
yeah,
dynamic.
not in your own family. It's too like this. You can't see it enough. You can't, so you go out
Right.
and do it someplace else.
Yeah.
Yeah, with
Right.
friends or with a work setting or
I
something like
mean,
that.
if I had relied on my family for some basic education things, like sex education and like, I'd probably still be a virgin. So, it's like, I'm sorry, it wasn't there.
Um, but that's the
Well,
beauty
that's
of
true.
both psychology and astrology. If we really
Yes.
use both of those skill
Yes.
sets and tools and
Yes.
get to know it, and you can know
Yeah.
your whole family lineage and know, oh yes, my family, say, did the Cartman drama
Yeah.
triangle, or had addiction, or had sexism, or you name it, we
Yep.
all
Yeah.
had something.
I
And
remember
then
I
how to go
remember one
about.
of my cousin's son asked me, he said, "Why am I so different than everybody?" Because he was into the hippie movement, No, it wasn't the hippie movement. What was it during the 60s? And I
Yeah,
said,
there was
"Well,
hippies.
Hippies.
I said it's a gene." I said my mother was a suffragette and a communist. She didn't fit in the family at all. I said,
Well, that's
so
the
it just goes
antidote.
from generation to generation.
Well, it's
Hey,
like that's the family antidote. Like, usually the antidote is born into the family. You need the image breaker, cycle breaker, black sheep
Right.
to
yeah.
radically, the prodigal son, something good or bad,
Mhm.
doesn't matter, but
Right.
it shatters the system.
Right.
So,
Yeah. It's
This
the old
is going
idea
to
of
be a
the,
good discussion next month.
yes, it should be. You got a whole lot to talk about.
We're going
Okay.
to have a
Well,
lot of energy, a lot of
yeah,
mom, dad, brother, sister stuff coming up.
we have to
I'm
plan extra
sure.
time. Well, thank you everybody for
Thank
joining
you.
us and
Thank you for
sticking it around. And
having this
Thank you.
Okay.
you're
community
welcome.
thing, this new way of relating,
Yeah.
connecting. There you go. What we need.
Thank you.
Someday
Bye
maybe we'll
bye,
find a way
guys.
to
Have a good month.
Are
And
you
get
putting,
together physically and meet.
Jim,
Thank
So
you, Cornelia.
are
Thank
you
you,
maybe
putting
we could
Cornelia.
do
thank you,
that.
Cornelia.
Okay. Thank
Maybe we
you.
can meet.
Thank you, everybody.
All
Thank you for your
right.
Bye.
Bye.
contributions.
Bye-bye.
Priscilla,
Bye.
Leslie, everybody, thank you so much.
Take care.
Y'all
Bye
take care.
bye.
See you
Bye.
next month. Alrighty. Bye for now.